Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 6 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I am Brian Wilson, and this is The Drive for today. It's the 25th day of October, according to my calendar. I think that's right. We're glad to have you. And finally, we have a Speaker of the House. That's right. At last, we have a speaker.
For the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress.
Our long national nightmare is now over. Woo. I thought it might go on for a while, but it is over today as Mike Johnson, Republican from the state of Louisiana, has finally been the person that could cobble together, 220 votes out of the 221 available votes, and he has become the 56th Speaker of the United States of America. There was a flurry of activity on the floor when he got to the magic number of 217.
Womack.
With the 217th pick in the race for Speaker, 3rd District of Arkansas selects Mike Johnson.
And, of course, the crowd went wild. That has been long coming. Mike, the crowd was going, and so there we have it. He takes the rostrum before he takes the oath of office, and actually, I loved his speech. I don't know much about Mike Johnson, and so we're all forming our first impressions, and you know what they say, you never get a second chance to form a first impression. I think he comes across as thoughtful. I think he comes across as very conservative. I think he comes across as a person with a bit of humility about him, which I really love in an elected official. It's a rare thing. It truly is. And there's no doubt about what he believes is right and what he believes is wrong. Here's from his speech.
We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end. In his farewell address, thank you. In his farewell address, President Reagan explained the secret of his rapport with people. And I like to paraphrase his explanation all the time. He said, they call me the great communicator, but I really wasn't that. He said, I was just communicating great things. And they're the same great things that have guided our nation since its founding. What are those great things? I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles, the things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world, the things that have made us truly exceptional. In this time of great crisis, it is our duty to work together, as previous generations of great leaders have, to face these great challenges and solve these great problems. I will conclude with this. The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here.
And that went over very well, I think, in the House of Representatives, where every member wants to be able to accomplish something and to have a little bit of the power. A decentralization of the power is something that will be, I think, a fresh breath of air in this body. Now, look, it's a tough job. His margins are still very, very thin, and he has a difficult job in trying to get the entire Republican conference to be in agreement on anything. If you want 217 votes, you've got to get the entire Republican conference behind you to pass legislation. And it's still a very heavy lift when you only have about a 5-vote margin that you can afford to lose. So he's got to work that. I think the first order of business is going to be some kind of sense of the House resolution in support of Israel, something that I think has been needed in the last few days, and that will come very quickly as soon as they can draft the language and they get ready to go. Probably the language is already drafted. And then I think if he's going to be successful, there's one heavy lift that he's got right off the bat. And that is he's got to change this stupid rule that they agreed to back in January that says any one member of the House can come forward and ask for a vote to vacate the chair. I mean, unless they change that, what we'll have is another one of these speaker battles in very short order. Because all that it takes is for one member of the Republican conference to get his or her nose out of joint, to go to the floor and say, I feel like I've been done wrong and I think it's time to vacate the chair. And if you can find 5 people who've also got their noses out of joint, then we lose our speaker and we have to go through this nonsense all over again. And I do believe it was nonsense. I do not believe that Kevin McCarthy should have been ejected when he had the support of 96% of the conference. 96%. Tossed out by 4%. You can't operate under that rule. And I think perhaps that this whole process has informed Republicans that perhaps that rule, while they thought it might be a good idea back in January, has, it has the power of unintended consequences. They've realized that maybe it is not the best answer. Mike Johnson, 56th Speaker of the House, comes from Shreveport, Louisiana. During his speech, he talked a little bit about, his dad, who was a firefighter and was the assistant fire chief in Shreveport, and who was seriously injured while the congressman was just a boy in a fire and lived with a great deal of pain his entire life. He said he grew up wanting to be a firefighter, but then after he saw what happened to his dad, he decided to take a different direction and has ended up in politics. A man who I think is going to make a great Speaker of the House, and I am ready now for this institution to get back to work. They've got a short time. Really, honestly, I hope that the staffs have been working behind the scenes during all of this to make sure that we are in good shape to go through all of the appropriations bills in rather quick order. I mean, regular order, too, which is a difficult thing to do. It takes time. But get those bills up, get them voted on, and get them sent to the Senate in time that the Senate, which is never going to agree to exactly what the House wants, given that it's controlled by Democrats, this is all going to have time to go into conference and work out the differences. And can they do that before I think it's November 17th deadline? That's going to be a very heavy lift for this new speaker, but it will be the real test of whether or not this man can keep the trains running on time. I mean, the job of speaker is sort of an interesting one in that, number one, you're sort of the mayor of Capitol Hill. You are really in charge of the complex. The Senate has, its say, but really, it's always been considered that the Speaker of the House is the controller of the complex. The keeper, the city, the mayor of this little town that they call Capitol Hill. It really is sort of like a little town. It's got its own generation plant for electricity. It's got barber shops and grocery stores and shops. It has all the restaurants, everything that you could want, to kind of operate on your own. It's its own little island inside of Washington, and he's responsible for that. He's also responsible for the security and dealing with the Capitol Police to make sure that the process, the institution, and the body in the building is safe. And that's part of it. Part of it is that he has the guy has to go head to head with the Senate if there are negotiations, with Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer on record today saying he doesn't know Mike Johnson, but he's looking forward to having conversations about moving the budgets forward. And it'll be interesting to see whether he can do that and whether or not he can use the two tools that you have as Speaker of the House. You have a club and you have a carrot. You can use the power of the chair and the abilities of like things like committee appointments. There's things you can do to bring people along or to punish people if they don't get in line. I mean, some speakers have been notoriously strong speakers. Sam Rayburn comes to mind, a man who wielded with a very heavy gavel, and a man who was not afraid to punish people who dared to cross him. That's one thing you can do, the club. The other thing is, bringing people along with, something that they really want. Here's a carrot you can dangle in front of them, the club and the carrot. And the ultimate goal of that is to get to what is possible. Politics in the House of Representatives is always the art of the possible. What's the best piece of legislation, from my perspective, that I can get out there that will actually get the requisite number of votes? That's always the goal. How will he work with Hakeem Jeffries? I don't know. He says he's going to fight hard for the things that the Republicans believe. But at times, you have to reach across the aisle. You have to have bipartisan support on things. So here we go. Now the 56th Speaker begins his reign on Capitol Hill. The House of Representatives, once again, is functional. The bicameral system actually has two bodies, and we are moving forward and with a close eye on the deadline to get the government funded before we have to go back and either do a short term. They don't really want to do another short term. They really don't want to do another short term. So can they get it done by the deadline? That is the heavy lift that everybody will be pulling hard for, to make sure that we can keep the government funded in some form that is responsible from the Republican side of the equation, without having to close the sucker down. And we will be joined at 3:35 in just a few moments, actually, by a man whose name was actually in consideration there for a while, Congressman Mark Green from Tennessee. His name was considered and bandied about yesterday, got quite a few votes, but he ultimately, when he realized he couldn't get the majority votes he needed to go forward, he turned his support to Mike Johnson, and was part of the reason why Mike Johnson was able to get 220 votes today. So we have a new Speaker of the House, and our long national nightmare is over, and we'll talk to Mark Green coming up in about 35 minutes. Right now, it's 20 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock.
President Biden has some news concerning the war between Israel and Hamas. He was meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, plus an update on Metro Police Chief John Drake's estranged son after an apparent suicide. That and more. 3:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yeah, I want to talk about that just a moment because it has been a story we've been covering all week long because John Drake Jr., the estranged son of the Nashville police chief, has been on the lam following an incident in which he, according to police, shot two police officers, and one in the arm, one in the groin, and the shoulder, and they're both okay. That's good news. But the thing had a sad ending in that John Drake Jr. Apparently killed himself when he was approached by police officers. According to WKRN, Metro Police spokesman Don Aaron said just after 6 p.m. last night, Drake approached some individuals at a home on Antioch Pike and demanded their gold Chrysler 200 at gunpoint. He got into the car and drove away. A short time later, Metro Police saw the Chrysler near the intersection of Thompson Lane and Patricia Drive and initiated a pursuit. They followed Drake until he eventually drove into the Edge Hill area onto 15th Avenue South, where he crashed the Chrysler into a parked car, got out of the car, ran into a shed behind a home in the 1400 block of 15th Avenue South. And when police officers got there, they heard a muffled gunshot from the shed. When officers moved in to investigate, they found that Drake had apparently shot himself, a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and he was dead. The chief put out a statement. I am grateful to members of the law enforcement community, including many officers from this department, who worked diligently since Saturday to locate my son and bring him into custody. It was my prayer that no harm would come to him or anyone else. I am heartbroken and saddened by the outcome. I appreciate the condolences and the kind words of support as my family and I privately mourn our loss. And then Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell sent his sympathies to Chief John Drake, saying it was a tragic end to John Drake Jr.'s life, and our heart goes out to Chief Drake and his family at this difficult time. As you know, he's been on the run since Saturday when Laverne police responded to a Dollar General store on a report of a stolen car. They made contact with the subject, and during that struggle, they say the suspect produced a handgun and fired shots. Ashley Bolyjack and Gregory Kern were both injured in that gunfire, taken to Vanderbilt, and they are going to be okay. That's the good news. He's going to be okay. John Drake Sr. has said from the very beginning that his son and he had been estranged for many years, and although he was tried to be a mentor and a guide for his son when he was young and in his teenage years, after he grew into an adult, he began a life of crime. We've reported to you earlier this week that there were 59 incidents in which he has come in contact with police, some of them very violent, and I think one of the questions that I still want to have answered out of all this before this sad story moves off of the headlines of the day is I want to know how someone can have 59 encounters with the law and have be a registered sex offender on 3 different accounts, and then also have some violent crimes in his rap sheet. How that person continued to be out in the public and a menace to society. And I hope that we don't lose sight of that part of the story here, because I think it answers a lot of questions. I have in my hand today a handful of stories from Nashville talking about how dangerous the town is getting. Nashville Waffle House gunman subdued by victim. One person shot at the Waffle House on Stewart Ferry Pike in Nashville. An arrest made after a man found stabbed to death inside a Madison hotel. Nashville's top fugitives for the week. They've added somebody to the top of the list there. Man injured after shots fired inside the Donaldson Waffle House. I told you that. Franklin teen charged after homes hit by bullets in Spring Hill. Suspect thought after 3 injured in a shooting outside a gas station in South Nashville. That's just in today's list of stories. The town is getting mean. The town is getting violent. And I think we need to not walk away from this without having a serious conversation about why that might be. I mean, I love, I think some of the ideas of community policing are not bad, but they can't replace the rule of law and enforcement of the law and actually taking some of these violent criminals off the street, trying them before a jury of their peers. This is something we don't do much anymore. We don't try anybody. We just cut plea deals. I want people to start going to trial, and I want the people to have a say in what that punishment should be. And if they are convicted by a jury of their peers, I want them to go to jail, and I want them to spend time there. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and the needs of the many are that we have a responsibility to make this town safe. Public safety is job number one, and the town cannot be safe if there are that many violent criminals roaming through the streets of Nashville. This is a prosecutorial problem. This is a judge problem. This is a problem where we need to insist as citizens of this community that we actually prosecute people for violent crimes. 3:30 now on Super Talk.
30 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 81 degrees right now in Nashville, and expecting a warm week here in Middle Tennessee. Traffic and a weather forecast coming up in 5 minutes. While hosting a joint press conference with the Australian Prime Minister today, President Biden denied, quote, demanding Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu halt the looming ground invasion of Gaza to secure the release of hostages. Karen Travers.
President Biden says he has not sought any assurances from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he'll delay a ground invasion into Gaza until the safe release of hostages.
What I have indicated to him is that if that's possible to get these folks out safely, that's what he should do. It's their decision. But I did not demand it.
The president said he's told Netanyahu if there's a real chance to get the hostages out, it should be done. Asked if the hostages are in jeopardy if there's a ground invasion, the president said, quote, obviously they're in jeopardy, but the question is whether there's a way to get them out.
And right now in Nashville, Metro Police Chief John Drake is out with a new statement after his son's apparent suicide.
Chief Drake says it wasn't the outcome he prayed for, but he thanked the members of law enforcement for, as he put it, working diligently to try to bring his son into custody without anyone getting hurt. John Drake Jr. died last night after police say he shot himself while hiding from police officers whom he had led on a chase to Edgewood. John Drake Jr. was wanted for the shooting that injured 2 Laverne police officers on Saturday. He was on the TBI's most wanted list. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And former President Trump has been fined $10,000 by the New York judge overseeing his civil fraud trial for violating the limited gag order he imposed. His defense initially pushing back on the judge's decision. Aaron Katursky is inside the courtroom in Manhattan with more.
The defense instantly balked at the $10,000 fine. Defense attorney Chris Kise said it certainly does look like he was referring to Michael Cohen, who's been on the witness stand. But the judge didn't see it that way, and the defense attorneys tried to fight this violation and the fine, and finally the judge said the ruling stands, don't do it again, or it will be worse.
And that is the latest news, weather, and traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hey everybody, Dan Mattis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
For the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress.
And our long national nightmare is over. We now have a new Speaker of the House. Standing by on the Newsmaker hotline, a man who actually put his name in the ring there for a short period of time, Representative Mark Green, the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee. And he's on the hotline now to talk a little bit about this new Speaker. Congressman Green, thank you so much for joining us on very short notice. We know you have a vote coming, so we'll get right to it. Tell us a little bit about Mike Johnson and what kind of speaker you think he's going to be.
Well, I think he's going to be great on a lot of levels. This guy is a deep faith conservative, grew up the son of a firefighter who actually got injured in a big fire and was disabled, I think, when Mike was about 12 years old. He's been a good friend of mine, supported me when I moved into the chairman's seat over at Homeland. I think he has a good vision. I think he'll manage the conference very well. He's a constitutional lawyer, so he gets the Second Amendment and the First, the things that really matter. He gets the 10th Amendment too, which is really important for us. The fight isn't in Washington; it's with Washington, and so I think he'll be very good.
He spent some time talking about his core principles, which I thought were really, really excellent, and he seems to be, from all outward appearance, a man who cares deeply about conservative ideas.
Absolutely, he is he's one of the more conservative. You can look at the voting records, and he's right there with myself and some of the other guys in Tennessee, most of the guys in Tennessee. So he's going to he'll be far more conservative than the guy he's replacing.
So talk about the process, which has been so elongated and elaborate, and a lot of votes behind closed doors. What was your impression about that whole process as it unfolded?
Well, there's some inside baseball there that I kind of figured out after I threw my name in the hat. And it was a little bit frustrating, but I think my throwing my name in the hat kind of got it exposed. So that was helpful for Mike to get the job. I decided to throw my name in because, we just it just kept going and going. And it's like, okay, well, I'm pretty well regarded in the conference and had a lot of people come to me. And so we just said, okay, we'll finally do this because somebody's got to do it. And we're flailing. And of course, like I said, I think that helped Mike get across the finish line because I was able to point out some stuff that was, working against getting this thing solved.
What was the inside baseball that you're talking about?
Well, I just think there were people who wanted this thing to drag out a little longer so that it would empower people who the conference were not supportive of. And so that's probably, the best I can say of it right now. It just provided an opportunity to show that there were people actually working behind the scenes to drag it out and empower people that the conference wasn't supportive of.
Can you change this rule, which I think, any speaker is going to be in jeopardy if that rule that allows any one person to come to the floor and get a vote on vacating the chair? Well, we could be going through this whole thing again if one member gets their nose out of joint.
So what happened to get us there is the first thing to understand. McCarthy tied the rules of the conference to the speaker's chair when he negotiated to get himself across the finish line.
Right.
And by doing so, the will of the conference became second to those one or two individuals that McCarthy needed. And when I gave my speech to the conference yesterday, I said, look, we got to separate the speaker from the rules. The rules belong to the conference. And one of my points, and thank goodness it's also Mike's point, is decentralizing the power of the speaker. I think we've got to empower the members to represent their districts. And that is something Mike wants to do. And this rulemaking, getting it back to the conference, let the conference decide what the rule ought to be. Not only this rule, but all the rules will let the members represent their districts. And that's I think the most important thing. I believe in representative democracy, and so does Mike. And so I'm glad to see him win it. And if he'd have won it the first time, I wouldn't have had to put my name in. So.
There are a lot of things that need to be done. I think first up on the list is a vote, maybe even this afternoon, in support of Israel. And then, can you get the budget appropriation bills across the goal line before I think the deadline's November 17th?
17th, yeah. So that's going to be a lot of work. And we were supposed to be in district this week and next week. And I don't think we are now. So we'll be here working to try to get as much of the approach bills done as we can. He issued a targeted backwards plan this morning. And so we're just going to crush and try to get them done. Now, there's a strong chance we don't get them all finished. There'll be some percentage of discretionary spending that's still, right now we're already like 60 or 70% passed, because the Senate passed, or the House passed. For example, my approach side, the Homeland approach, we passed Department of Defense approach. So the big chunk items, most of them have gone through. We've got several more, but we'll get more of those done, and then we may or may not have a few left over, and then we'll have to address that issue getting closer to November 17th. But we will get a lot of them done.
Of course, anything that comes out of the House has to then be considered by the Senate, and
That's correct.
It seems as if there will be a need for several conferences. That takes time.
Yeah, it does. And what's tragic is those 4 bills that we've sent to the Senate, the Senate hasn't done a single thing on them. And in fact, Chuck Schumer, I think it was a week or so ago, right after we sent the Homeland Appropriations bill over, he took a trip to China. So the Senate's got to get off its backside and start doing some work, because they have 4 appropriations bills sitting over there waiting on them to action on, and they haven't done anything.
Yeah. What is the great lesson you think that has been learned as a result of this whole mess?
I think one of the biggest lessons is the speaker. You can't tie the committee rules to the speaker and make basically the entire conference of the Congress beholding to 1 or 2 members or some number of members, and that's a big lesson. And Mike, Speaker Johnson gets it, and I think we're in a much better place. Like I said, we've got a much more conservative Speaker of the House of Representatives right now, and for Tennesseans and for America, that's an amazing and great thing.
All right. Well, Congressman Mark Green from the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee, I know you have a vote coming up in a matter of minutes, and I promise to release you. Thank you so much for being available to us on short notice.
Yeah, Brian. Thanks. Call anytime. See you.
Oh, okay. Congressman Mark Green of 7th Congressional District, a good friend of this program, and we always appreciate it when he makes himself available, especially, during breaking news, when you're basically trying to interrupt somebody's day and trying to squeeze into what is already usually a very busy schedule. Well, there we have it. He will be, it's going to be really busy in the House of Representatives. We had a conversation earlier with Matt Murphy, who said, well, the votes are where they are, and some people are going to be out there that are always going to be conservative, and some are going to be liberal, and some are going to be moderate, and the mix of the House often determines, and he was making the case that the speakership is really not, in the grand scheme of things, all that important. And I quibble with that, not because he makes a good point. Matt always makes a good point, but I do think that leadership matters. I do think that in a situation like this, that the speaker has a limited number of tools at his or her disposal to try to get people to come together to get a magic number that will pass a bill. In the House of Representatives, that number right now is 217. You need 217 votes to prevail on anything, and that's not easy to get. When you have a Republican Party that is divided against itself, and the Democrats that are going to generally vote in lockstep on the other side, it's a tough thing to do. And so I think for him, it's going to be interesting to see how he takes on the challenge of what I call the art of the possible. nothing happens unless you can find the right combination to make something possible. And that sometimes requires compromise, but you don't want to compromise on your core beliefs, which he's very strong on. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes. Mark Green will not have much time to sort of. One thing I admired greatly about them is there are usually things that happen, these sort of pomp and ceremony things that happen once you have a new speaker, celebratory things. And he said, we just really don't have time for that. And he's right. We don't have time for the pomp and ceremony. What we got to do is get nose to the grindstone and start getting some things done. And I am encouraged by the fact that when I look at the speaker we have now and what I can determine about him and his record, we have a much more conservative Speaker of the House than we had when Kevin McCarthy was Speaker. And I think that this is a good thing for the people of Tennessee and a good thing for the country that we have a guy who seems to be, if you look at his voting record, extremely conservative. By the way, a man who has been an ardent supporter of President Trump. I don't think that in the way things are going right now, I don't think anybody would become Speaker if they weren't given a sort of a nod by the former president, which he gave the nod to Johnson, said he thought he'd make a good speaker. He was not enamored with Emmer, by the way, and that pretty much killed Emmer's possibility, a chance of becoming the speaker. So I think part of it was that they got worn down over the period of 3 weeks, and they were feeling the pressure of needing to come to some kind of decision. And for one reason or another, they have settled on Mike Johnson, and I think we're in pretty good shape there. I like what I see of this man in the early going. It's 49 minutes now, past the hour of 3 o'clock on Super Talk. Hey, here's a question for you. Do you have replacement cost insurance coverage on your roof? If the answer is not yes, then you pretty much don't. And this means the insurance company will depreciate how much they pay for your roof claim if you have one, potentially leaving you with thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket expenses. Now, that's something that, you're probably not going to get if your insurance comes from one of those internet companies, the ones. The big companies that advertise all the time on TV. Listen, what you need is to sign up with King and Associates Insurance in Brentwood. They've been around for some 25 years as an independent agency, and I think that's really what you really want. There's a couple of reasons why I think that works to your advantage. Number one, because they are independent, they are not locked into one kind of policy. They can shop around and get you a good rate and actually coverage that meets your particular need. They're not going to be trying to shove a square peg into a round hole. They're going to be able to give you something that actually meets your needs, that is a good fit for you. And then the second thing is, I think that you get better customer service if you need it. I mean, you call this number, 615-329-8121. You don't reach a call center. You don't hit a phone tree. You don't get a recording that says your call is very important to you, but it's really not, because if it was, they would answer, right? You get an actual person at King and Associates. Multi-policy discounts can help you save big money, and they know how to play that game. You can save 20, 25, 30, 35%. Big savings. So get your royal review with King and Associates Insurance. Just log into tkinginsurance.com. That's tkinginsurance.com. King Assurance and Associates, royal treatment and great rates.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. There was a recent study by J.D. Power looking at how happy investors were with their advisors, and it wasn't pretty. What they found was only 11% of the respondents said that they were getting comprehensive financial planning, that the fees were clear, and that they felt that the advisor was acting in their best interest. Not a good picture, 11%. Now, one of the things that we do is we do comprehensive planning. We fit all of those bills, number one. But one of the things I want to talk about is in the financial planning process, what I think it ought to look like and what is available that people aren't getting. And one of the things is called probability analysis. So in essence, this is what we're talking about. We're trying to accumulate money for retirement, put money aside, hoping that we'll have enough so that we can have income throughout retirement. And what we find is that people have Social Security, they have pensions in their financial plan, and they also have investments. Now, with their investments, we want to do something very specific that it really requires quite an academic background to do this. And this is where we look at the cost of capital of the various things that you own in your investment portfolio. It sounds scary, it sounds really detailed, but here's the idea. Is if we look at various asset classes like large stocks and small stocks and large value and bonds and so on and so forth, we know the expected return or the cost that these entities have to pay to use your money. So we can come up with an expected return of the portfolio. We can also come up with what's called standard deviation, or how much that portfolio return may deviate from the expected return. Now that's a whole other video, but what I want to do is show you how we use this. If I look at a financial plan and I say, well, you got this area, this area, this area, what I can do is I can say, well, based on when you want to retire, this is how much income you can take, and here's the likelihood of being able to have this income survive throughout your entire life. And the way it works is this. If I take a portfolio and I say, there's the expected return, I can look at history and say, well, the way your portfolio is designed, how might your one-year returns vary from the expected return, the long-term expected return? Well, what we know from academic research is that portfolios well designed and properly managed in ways that I can't get into right now, it's too complicated, portfolios actually close in an expected return, but we don't know what the short-term returns are going to be. So what we do is we project out and say, well, what if the return that happened in 1936 is followed by the return that happened in 1975, which is followed by the return in 1995, or what if it's reversed? What if they happen in different orders? And we can do 1,000 iterations, different variations on when those and how those returns may come in. And what that does is, because we can't predict the future, what return's going to follow the other, we can figure out, is it likely that we are going to be able to take the income that we need throughout retirement from this portfolio? And if not, how can we rearrange the furniture or the portfolio to give us a higher likelihood of success? And we look at life expectancies, we look at a lot of different things, but this is what is available to people that they're not getting from the financial planning community. If you want to know more, go to paulwinkler.com, set up a free 15-minute phone call, paulwinkler.com, and come in and find out more about what we do.
Tennessee Representative Mark Green joins the drive and talks about who's Speaker elected, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, and the process getting him there. It was a long process. President Biden hosting a joint press conference with Australian Prime Minister today and brings up the innocent civilians that have been killed on the Gaza Strip. Plus, police on the lookout in Nashville for a criminal. That and more at 4. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, let's take a look real quick at the markets. Dow Jones Industrials down 105, S&P down 60, NASDAQ down 318. That's 2.43%. So all screens are vibrantly red today. This brought to you by Beacon Capital Management. Learn more about all the things they can do for you by going to their website, askbeaconnow.com. 58 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock.
.401, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. A pleasant 80 degrees on Music Row. Weather and traffic report coming up in 5 minutes. Speaker of the House News, Tennessee Representative Mark Green, who put his hat in the ring for Speaker of the House for a short time, joined WTN's The Drive to discuss what kind of Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana will be.
He's been a good friend of mine, supported me when I moved into the chairman's seat over at Homeland. I think he has a good vision. I think he'll manage the conference very well. He's a constitutional lawyer, so he gets the Second Amendment and the First, the things that really matter. He gets the 10th Amendment too, which is really important for us. The fight isn't in Washington; it's with Washington, and so I think he'll be very good.
And Green called Johnson one of the more conservative members of the caucus. The representative also mentioned that there were members that purposefully wanted this process to last as long as possible. He mentioned that putting himself in that nomination process proved that pretty quickly on. Now they get to work on the appropriations bills with a deadline set November 17th. And today, while hosting a joint press conference with the Australian Prime Minister, President Biden continued to stand by Israel's right to defend themselves. But he also said he's urged the country to do everything in its power to protect innocent civilians in the Gaza Strip. Karen Travers has more on what the president said in the Rose Garden this afternoon.
A report reporter at the press conference said to President Biden that the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry says Israeli forces in less than 3 weeks have killed over 6,000 Palestinians, including 2,700 children, and asked him if that meant Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was ignoring his calls to minimize civilian casualties. The president said he has no confidence in the casualty numbers the Palestinians are using.
What they say to me is I have no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed.
And police on the lookout in Tennessee. 3 people were injured in a shooting last night at a GC Mart in South Nashville. All 3, a man, a woman, and a security guard, expected to recover from their injuries. Metro Police said the shooting's believed to have stemmed from an altercation that began in the parking lot. And in California, a city councilman in Los Angeles is trying to put the brakes on self-driving cars in the city a day after a major autonomous vehicle testing program hit a roadblock in San Francisco. Blake Trolley reports from L.A.
Councilman Hugo Soto Martinez has introduced a motion to have officials in L.A. join officials in San Francisco in calling for a rehearing at the state level on the testing of so-called robo-taxis.
Robot taxi safety incidents, including crashes and congestion, are becoming the norm across the country, having taken place in Austin, San Francisco, Nashville, Houston, and so much more.
Yesterday, the DMV suspended testing permits for Cruise self-driving cars. The DMV says the cars are unsafe for the public's operation.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is 4 o'clock, 4:07 actually, to be exact. We're running up the second hour of the drive here for you on this 25th day of October. You just get you home safely, and we'll bring you up to date on things going on. If you are just joining us, just got in your car, in the last hour we spoke a lot about this, but I want to bring you up to speed. We do have a Speaker of the House finally. Our long national nightmare is over. He is Representative Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana. He becomes the 56th Speaker of the House, receiving 220 out of 221 votes. And that was enough to get him across the goal line, and we don't have to talk about that anymore for a while. The other things to talk about, but not that. And boy, what a good thing that is. We just talked to Mark Green, who said he thinks this guy's very conservative, much more conservative than Kevin McCarthy was. And he thinks he's a good guy, likes him. And in fact, Mark Green, who threw his hat into the ring for a moment or two, actually folded his attempt to become Speaker of the House and threw his support in his direction. So he says, I've known him. I've worked with him. I think he's a very conservative guy. He thinks that it's a win for the state of Tennessee to have a more conservative Speaker of the House. Want to turn to what's happening on the other continual big story that we try to check in on every day, and that is what's happening in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas and the Gaza Strip. There are some stories that are dropping now, which I think are fairly significant to this whole developing story. The first one is that this is from the Wall Street Journal. They're doing some great reporting on what's happening over there. Hamas fighters were trained in Iran before the October 7th attacks. In the weeks leading up to the Hamas October 7th attack on Israel, hundreds of the Palestinian Islamist militant group fighters received specialized combat training in Iran, according to people familiar with intelligence related to the assault. Senior Palestinian officials and Iranian Brigadier General Ismail Khani, the head of the Quds force, also attended. They said more than 1,400 people, mostly civilians, killed on October 7th by Hamas fighters who poured across the border from the Gaza Strip. Scores of others were kidnapped and taken back to Gaza, where they are being held hostage. Hamas attackers used aerial drones to disable Israeli observation posts and high-tech surveillance equipment. Some used paragliders to fly into Israel. Others rode in on motorcycles, commonly used by Iranian paramilitary groups, but not by Hamas, until October 7th. U.S. officials said Iran has regularly trained militants in Iran and elsewhere, but they have no indications of a mass training right before the attack. But this particular story from the Wall Street Journal does not quote U.S. intelligence officials. So there is that. Hamas fighters, I mean, if the United States has been looking for a connection, there is intelligence out there that has been reported here by the Wall Street Journal, which is hard to ignore. And again, it sort of nails down Iran. We all knew Iran was involved. We just didn't know exactly how. This advances the thinking on that. Israel agrees to a request to delay the invasion of Gaza, which has come from the United States. This as the Pentagon rushes to deploy nearly a dozen air defense systems to the region. Again, from the Wall Street Journal. The Pentagon is rushing to deploy nearly a dozen air defense systems to the region, including for U.S. troops serving in Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. Because, U.S. troops are coming under attack from missiles and rockets. One wonders why these weren't already in place, given that we had U.S. troops there. But the number of troops, I think, has increased in recent days. And now U.S. forces are trying to make sure that air defense systems are in place to protect not only Israelis, but U.S. troops that are in the region. And there's a bunch of them. U.S. officials, here's the key graph, have so far persuaded the Israelis to hold off on sending tanks and foot soldiers into Gaza and to end Hamas rule until those pieces can be placed in the region. And that could happen as early as, Thursday or Friday. Israel is going to move ahead with the next stage in our campaign to destroy Hamas. In our response to the October 7th massacre, said Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy. But Levy also said many factors are being taken into account, including that President Biden's urging that Israel is not going to act out of anger. Well, why wouldn't they? They have every right to be angry. Israel, he said, was not shooting from the hip, and we will use our force judiciously. More on exactly what's going on. U.S. troops, as I mentioned, have come under rocket and drone attacks from Iranian-backed militants in Iraq and Syria and in the Red Sea. The USS Carney intercepted cruise missiles and drones that the Pentagon said were launched by Yemeni Houthi forces. The Houthis, not with the blowfish. The Houthis are bad people in Yemen. They also backed by Iran. Hezbollah, too, is backed by Iran and has repeatedly exchanged deadly fire with Israel since October 7th. I mean, the idea here is that we've got these ships, one guarding the front door, which is the USS Gerald Ford Strike Group, which is a bunch of ships and a submarine, and that's out there. We have a Marine Expeditionary Force, which is really their expertise is apparently in hostage retrieval, and they're out there in the Mediterranean. In the Red Sea, sort of the back door, we've got the USS Eisenhower Strike Group and a series of other ships that are there, including cruise missile destroyers that are designed basically to take out missiles that are fired by our enemies. Threats of the U.S. troops are of paramount concern, officials said. U.S. military and other officials believe that American forces will be at heightened risk by various Iran-backed militant forces once the incursion begins. So that's one of the reasons why the Biden administration is asking Israel to hold off for a moment. Let us get these defensive capabilities in the region, set up our own little mini iron domes around our troops so that, when you go into Gaza with your ground forces and the Iran-backed forces in the region start to attack U.S. troops at the same time, we will have our men and women protected. The crash U.S. military buildup is really quite something. The Ford, I mentioned the Eisenhower, their accompanying warships, a terminal high-altitude area defense system known as a THAAD system, nearly a dozen Patriot missile batteries. When both carriers arrive, the U.S. will have the equivalent. Are you ready for this? 11 U.S. jet fighter squadrons in the region, including F-35s, F-15s, F-16s, F-A-18s, and 8, the ever-popular A-10 Warthogs. You want your Warthogs there. Go ugly early is what they say. Send in the Warthogs. They have the ability to take out ground positions in a very, how should I put this, very effective way. And the thing about the A-10s is the Air Force has been trying to get rid of them forever. And what happens is the people who are actually on the ground keep saying, over our dead bodies, no, we love the Warthog. The Warthog is what we want. In a situation where we're coming under attack, we want the Warthogs on our side. And so they have continued to stay and get upgraded so that they are still very effective. And I'm glad that the Warthogs are still in the arsenal. I think they could be. If we still rely on 1957 technology in a B-52, and if we're going to, they say, well, this is 60s technology. I don't care. Sometimes you just get it right, You just come up with the thing that works. And we shouldn't throw them away when they can be upgraded and continue to be in the arsenal. And I'm very happy to see them in the region. And I know that the troops are happy to see them as well. So there are the big stories that are developing with regard to Israel and Hamas and the ongoing fights. We still have not found many of our are hostages. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of 203 thought to be hidden away in this spider web of tunnels underneath Gaza City. 311 miles of tunnels in a very sort of compact area. Still having trouble with Americans trying to get out of Israel. A story that has crossed the wires today that says that Americans are still having trouble getting out of Israel, and Americans are still having a problem getting out of Gaza. There are maybe as many as 600 Americans in Gaza who are trying to get out through what is known as the Rafah Gate, which is the southern exit of Gaza, the Gaza Strip that leads into Egypt. And they're trying desperately to get out, and they're complaining that the State Department has absolutely been of no help to them in trying to do that. More aid was able to get through a few days ago, but in the last couple of days, no additional aid has gotten through that gate going north to help out the Palestinian people. See, that you have to draw a distinction between people who are in Hamas and the Palestinian people. Not all Palestinians are supportive of Hamas. And so there are many of them that have sort of amassed around the southern gate down there at Rafah in order to stay out of the area that the Israelis intend to invade in the north, because they will come north and work their way south. And so people have left the city to get out of the way before that happens. And they are without food and they were without water, and the supplies that are getting in are limited. So sort of a humanitarian crisis developing down on the far end of the Gaza Strip, and Egypt not willing to open the gates and let a lot of people out. 20 minutes now past the hour. You may have seen it the last time your family got together for a holiday, and you look around and you see that the older members of your family are now really starting to struggle. Things that were once so easy for them are now difficult. Day-to-day things, well, they require a little assistance. Remind us that they're approaching an age where they will need more and more help, and this is where assisted family care can help. They can connect you with a responsible, compassionate, compatible helper to assist you with your loved one's daily needs. And if your loved one is a veteran or a spouse or a widow of a veteran, they might qualify for a little-known benefit to help cover these kinds of expenses. It's not easy, but Assisted Family Care has years of experience in helping those in Middle Tennessee who qualify to get access to the benefit. You may not know it, but many veterans are eligible to receive up to 20 hours of daily living assistance each week at no cost to them. Not everyone is eligible, but if you're a veteran with wartime service, you may qualify for the benefit for yourself or for your spouse. Application process is daunting and confusing, but don't worry. Assisted Family Care has years of experience in cutting through the red tape. They can help you, connect you with a responsible, compatible helper. Assisted Family Care will be there for you. Visit assistedfamilycare.com or call this number, 615-833-9725.
Hey everybody, Dan Mattis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
Congressman Mark Green joins the show and explains the ins and the outs of this long process that finally ended up with the Speaker of the House today, Mike Johnson, plus some money news, that and more. 4:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 25 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, October 25th. Man, the month is just speeding by. Going to be Halloween here before you know it. It's one of my favorite times of year. So far, the 12-foot skeleton erected in my front yard remains unmolested, still standing. It has an eerie black light shining up on it now.
That's why. Yeah, it's just kept everyone away. Everyone's scared.
And it really is sort of scary looking, I'll have to say. It's time for a new fan favorite here, a little thing that we like to call news that will light your fuse. And here is our story for today. It has to do with the southern border, and Senator John Kennedy over on the Senate side of Capitol Hill has a whole series of officials from the Biden administration who work in Homeland Security and are responsible for answering questions about the border, and it didn't go well for them. Here is Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana.
Thank you, Senator. I'm HSI as an investigative agent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Morant, since President Biden's been president, how many non-American citizens have come into our country illegally or on the basis of a claim of asylum?
Thank you, Senator. I'm HSI as an investigative agency is...
do you know the number?
No, Senator.
You're a senior member of Homeland Security, are you not?
That's correct.
Does anybody know the number? None of you know the number. Try 8 million. Now, of that 8 million, how many were children, Mr. Morant?
I don't have that number.
You don't know. Does anybody know? None of you know. Isn't that special? Let's assume half. Okay. 8 million is 4 Nebraskas. Right? 4 new states. Let's assume, I don't think it's as high, half of them are children. How many of those 8 million people are still here? Do any of you know? Okay. How many of those 8 million are claiming asylum? You don't know? How many of them claim asylum and don't show up for their hearing? Nobody knows? How many of them claim asylum, don't show up for the hearing, and President Biden has deported them? You don't know? How many of them have claimed asylum, shown up for their asylum hearing, and been denied asylum and been deported? You don't know.
Nobody knows. All that awkward silence. Senator Cornyn talking to another Homeland Security official.
22, that people from 174, did you know that in 2022 that people from 174 different countries came to our border and were released into the interior of the United States, 174 countries? Did you know that?
Sorry, no, sir, I did not.
And did you know so far in 2023, people from 143 countries have come to our border and been released by the Biden administration into the interior of the United States? Did you know that number?
No, sir, I did not.
Nobody seems to know anything. How can they let 8 million people into our country, as Senator Kennedy has said? That's the equivalent to 4 Nebraskas. Oh, man. I mean, think about it. 4 additional states worth of people have been let in, and they don't know anything about nothing. Like Sergeant Schultz, I don't know anything. I see nothing. I don't know anything. Senator Hawley continued.
Ms. Marcos, can I just start with you? You testified a moment ago to Senator Butler that every child gets a Know Your Rights presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that before or after you release them to labor traffickers?
Awkward silence.
Senator, every child that comes into our care gets a Know Your Rights presentation as well as...
Have you read these New York Times reports, these stories, the series of stories the New York Times has done on the children who are in your care? Have you read them?
Yes, I have.
Have you read that children are scrubbing dishes, they are operating heavy machinery, they are delivering meals, they are harvesting coffee, they are working construction, they are working as housekeepers, they are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid, they are not going to school, they are not cared for, they are not giving meals, almost all of it illegally. Are you aware of that? That's a yes or no.
Yes.
Aware of it, not doing anything about it. It's enough to light your fuse and make you just crazy. Ah! All right, before we go, I feel it's my responsibility to calm you down a little bit with some deep cleansing breaths. You know, high blood pressure is not good for you. And although this is enough to make you have high blood pressure, we want you to be calm. And in with the good air. And out slowly with the bad air. All right. It's now 31 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk.
.431, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 79 degrees, a gorgeous day in Nashville and around Middle Tennessee. Expecting a lot of the same this week. Sunny, clear skies around this sort of temperature. Again, 79 degrees. Full weather forecast. Latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. Some Speaker of the House news with Mike Johnson now officially elected as the new Speaker of the House. Tennessee Representative Mark Green, who put his hat in the ring for Speaker for a short time, joined WTN's The Drive to discuss the long process of electing a new speaker and explain the ins and outs.
I decided to throw my name in because, you know, we just hadn't, it just kept going and going. And it's like, okay, well, I'm pretty well regarded in the conference and had a lot of people come to me. And so we just said, okay, we'll finally do this because somebody's got to do it. And we're flailing. And of course, like I said, I think that helped Mike get across the finish line because I was able to point out some stuff that was, you know, working against getting this thing solved.
Green mentioned that he thought that there were representatives purposefully making the process drag out as long as possible. He also mentioned that Johnson's one of the more conservative members in the House and that he supports him fully. Now they have to work on the appropriations bills with a deadline set for November 17th. Now over to the money news, Daria Albinger.
Stocks fell on big drops for tech companies, the Dow giving up 105 points, the Nasdaq down 319, and the S&P closing off 61. Google's parent company Alphabet fell sharply on worries about a slowdown in growth for its cloud computing business. Amazon, Nvidia, and Apple also fell, but it wasn't all bleak for tech. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, reported better than expected third quarter numbers after the closing bell. The United Auto Workers may be getting closer to a tentative agreement with Ford, which could be a big step toward ending the strike against the Big Three. Two people with knowledge of the talks say the unions made a counteroffer to Ford, proposing a 25% general wage increase over the life of a new 4-year contract. Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors so far have offered 23% increases. Bitcoin's having another moment. The world's largest cryptocurrency soared to almost $35,000 this week, the highest value in nearly a year and a half.
And that is the latest news, traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Let me tell you about the folks at USS, because when it comes to large home repairs, things like waterproofing or foundation repair, if you have problems, you know it. You know right away you do. Call this company, United Structural Systems. Over 25,000 satisfied residential customers. And don't take my word for it. Just listen to some of the things that have been said. Here's a particularly good one. Joshua from Nashville. Recently had our foundation repaired by the team at USS. It was an exceptional experience. They finished ahead of schedule, kept us informed every step of the way, restored everything perfectly, even after digging deep into our lawn and tearing out concrete. Their professionalism and courtesy stood out, working seamlessly around other vendors at our home, and explained all the changes that came up front. Communication was top-notch and friendly, making the process smooth. What impressed us most was the cleanliness. They contained the mess. They left the site spotless. We got multiple quotes, and USS was not only competitive but honest about unnecessary add-ons we saw from others. Highly recommend USS. I mean, what else do you need to hear? This is the company you want to call if you have problems. They'll come out. They'll take a look at your situation. They will, make a recommendation. If you go forward, it doesn't cost a penny until the job is done and you're completely satisfied. USS, guaranteeing their best, serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Northern Alabama. Online at USSTN.com. The number 615-488-7855.
We really are passionate about our state. It's so beautiful, and we just want people and all Tennesseans to help us keep it that way. We really want to make sure that, our beauty, and from, west to east to even Middle Tennessee, we want to make sure it's nice and clean for everyone to enjoy. I like to get people to volunteer and to get out there and keep our world clean, man. Litter's disgusting. No one likes it.
That's right. Yeah, if you ask my wife, I've always said, keep Tennessee beautiful. That's kind of been, I think I found a T-shirt or something a long time ago.
It's that marketing.
Yeah.
Really good job.
It's like,
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sense in throwing your trash out the window or when you're hunting or fishing, leaving the trash there on the bank or whatever. It's not worth it.
Currently, there are 88 million pieces of litter on Tennessee roadways at any given time in this state.
Wow.
And TDOT currently spends $23 million on picking up the litter, educating about the litter.
The Nobody Trashes Tennessee campaign, there's some great videos out there. And I was watching the litter lessons and the show and get to know the Red Plastic Cup. Tell us a bit about the campaign and some of those characters. That's pretty neat.
So Red Plastic Cup, he thinks he's a movie star. He thinks he's just the greatest thing ever. So he started off with a talk show, and then he got a movie. And in our movie, he got, more characters, and we had experts, water quality expert was Sal, the smallmouth bass.
Yeah.
And his bodyguard is Trash Squatch. And if, we can go into Trash Squatch a little bit too, but love Trash Squatch.
It is 39 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7, and it's Wednesday, and this is the time where we always, when we're lucky, get to talk to Pete Hegseth, who is a host of Fox and Friends on the weekend on the Fox News channel, and also a resident of Middle Tennessee when he's not on the air in New York, lives up in Sumner County. He's also a man who knows that when we say 4:35, it's aspirational. We try to be ready by 4:35. How are you doing, Pete?
We're ready. I'm good. I'm great, Brian. Good to talk to you.
Well, we got a Speaker of the House finally. Our long national nightmare is over. What do you think about the developments of the last week or so, and what do you think about this new guy, Mike Johnson?
Well, I think it's a good development. I think last week when we spoke, my prediction was it's going to be, I said lowest common denominator, but what I meant was effectively someone that offended nobody at some level and wasn't a lead member of a particular wing of the party. I've known Mike Johnson. I don't know him well, but I've worked with him on different. He's a congenial guy, principled conservative, and what was the kind of guy that, hey, the Freedom Caucus could look to and say improvement. Republican Study Group knows him because he's been a part of it, and leadership seemed to not be overly threatened by it. So it's good in that business will get done. And I think you've also got an ally of President Trump who will be the nominee for the Republican Party, which means you don't have to have that back and forth infighting either. So I think it's a good development, and hopefully Republicans can start doing good things.
I mean, we had Mark Green on, who had for a while put his hat into the ring, and he said that he likes the guy and thinks that he's much more conservative than the previous speaker, and he thought that was a good outcome for the people of Tennessee. And I tend to agree based on what I know about the guy. I'm sort of the same boat. I don't know a great deal about him, but what I know about him, I tend to have a very favorable impression. I think he handled himself well on the world stage today. Seemed to come across as a guy with a bit of humility about him.
That's right. And I think that's why he worked. I mean, this is not a guy who, it seems, went to Congress to try to be the Speaker of the House or make a name for himself at the detriment of his peers, but at the same time put his head down and was very conservative, very consistent on big issues, therefore very popular, worked well with other people to make things happen. So I don't know. I mean, I felt like this type of person was the person we were going to get, even though I would have loved to have seen Jim Jordan win it. There were too many dug in. And just hearing the rumblings out of the caucus after the vote came in for Mike Johnson, it felt like he'd be the guy.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad to hear your assessment of the guy. So tell me, you've been looking at what's happening in the other big story in the world right now is the Israelis have been poised outside the Ares Gate, ready to go in at any time into Gaza, and they've been holding on and holding on. Now comes some reporting from the Wall Street Journal, which suggests that it's because the United States has asked them to pause for a moment while they try to bring in some protection for U.S. troops. I guess the thinking is when the Israelis go into Gaza, the U.S. troops will come under attack even more than they have been already.
Well, it's disappointing to think we wouldn't have assumed that posture anyway with troops in the region. I mean, why do we not already have missile batteries if we have troops in Syria and Iraq, knowing at any moment something like this could happen? First of all, we shouldn't be telling Bibi Netanyahu what he can or cannot do. Second of all, you would want an American president saying, even if you are caught off guard, hey, we want to do what we can to protect our troops should this expand. So I can understand that rationally looking at Americans and America first, but it's all yesterday. It's all too late. It's all too little. And you're already seeing it I didn't get a chance to see that whole press conference today, but I heard tidbits. And when you got a guy like that at the podium who's playing both sides of him already, can barely stay awake, the future of Israel's existence is at stake here. Netanyahu should be able to do what he needs to do, and Joe Biden shouldn't devolve into the quick both sides that we're starting to see.
You would think that President Trump's numbers might be up right now a little bit, given the fact that he's on the world stage, he's traveling to Israel, and he's appears to be. I think his appearances in Israel were not helpful, actually. But you would think that people would rally behind him at a time like this. I got two polls here. Harris X poll has Trump up by 4 nationwide. University of Texas poll out today has Trump leading Biden by as many as 8 points. In Missouri, Trump will defeat Biden if the election were held today by 13 points. And if you add Kennedy into that mix, it becomes 15 points. I mean, I keep looking at these numbers, and I keep wondering, how long will the Democrats stand with Joe Biden, given the fact that there are many of these polls out there that show Trump doing extremely well in the national election?
I mean, Brian, we've asked that question for the better part of a year in our weekly conversations, and they haven't moved. They haven't budged. I mean, you do see Gavin Newsom over there with Xi Jinping in China doing his dress rehearsal. which is to be expected. But again, he's still circling the tarmac, waiting for an opportunity to land. And I think the Biden team seized on this as a contrast to Afghanistan, as an opportunity to present their man as a steady hand in foreign affairs. Instead, what does he stand for? He goes over there and says what? Nothing. Blinken goes over there and does what? There's no clarity. The big phrase you can come away from this is don't. Don't is the big word that Biden uses to our adversary. Don't. Donald Trump's like, touch a hair on the head of one soldier and we're bombing your headquarters. And Biden simply says don't. Now, as we learn that American bases all around the region have been attacked and Americans have been injured, seems that the don't isn't working. So they know their domestic policy isn't gonna sail on re-election. So they're trying foreign policy, and I just still haven't seen any movement away from him as their nominee, even though he gets worse. I mean, he gets worse and worse.
He gets worse and worse by the day.
They're counting on RFK. I mean, it's been interesting to see some of the polls and how they cut. They've stopped criticizing him because they're hoping he could be useful in cutting into a vote count too. Although who knows where that goes.
Well, in Missouri, it doesn't sell. I mean, if you add Kennedy into the mix in Missouri, Trump gains 2 points according to the recent polling. So, the polling that I've seen indicates that Kennedy may draw a little from both sides, which I think is interesting.
It depends on which Kennedy decides to stand up, because Kennedy's a radical leftist on most issues, but he's got some intriguing ideas that appeal to some independent-minded people. If the Trump campaign can frame him as who he has been, I think he takes more from Biden.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that hasn't yet started. I'm surprised that it hasn't. I'm also curious as to how you think the situation will resolve itself with regard to all of the the things that are on the horizon. We got to get a budget passed. Doesn't look like that's going to get done on time, etc. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to keep the government running. And again, I don't care if it shuts down. It seems like to me, really, it doesn't hurt us all that bad. But a lot of people get upset about that kind of thing.
Yeah, they do. I'm with you. I don't care if it gets shut down. Yes, I know it disturbs people's lives. I understand that. Back pay does come to everybody who is affected by it. But you got to take a stand at some point. You wonder whether the caucus will give Johnson a pass to cut a short-term deal so that he can determine his own agenda. I mean, talk about a guy under the gun right now with another shutdown looming. That could be the case. But, we didn't have a speaker and we weren't doing anything, and I didn't miss it all that much. It means, we didn't send $60 billion more to Ukraine. So that's a bonus. And they want to send $14 billion to the border to not secure it. So I'm not quite sure what emanates from Washington these days is any good anyway.
All right. And I want to give you a chance to talk about your Patriot Awards. We're still running the commercial, and I think there are some tickets still available for the Patriot Awards here in Nashville. Very excited for this.
Very excited. We're all a little down and out right now with the state of the world. And what I think the Patriot Awards will do on November 16th at the Grand Ole Opry, at the Opry House, will raise your spirits about what America's all about. We may not love the leadership we have right now. We might not love things happening, but we can recognize those that still put the uniform on every day, don't expect the spotlight, and we get a chance to highlight them. So we got some great musical guests. We have some surprises of who's getting the awards. Obviously, nobody knows that yet. Some of them don't even know it. And it's going to be an inspiring night. So go to foxnation.com/Patriot Awards. There are still some tickets available. I hope you'll come out and see us, because we're going to put on a good show and remind everybody why we should continue to fight for this great country.
And of course, this is your big event every year, and boy, I admire
my
you
deal.
for taking.
Yeah, I'm going to be the guy on the stage, emceeing the entire thing, and all the Fox folks will be there: Hannity, Laura, Jesse, the Five, Fox and Friends, and you can get online and buy tickets for special viewing events and things like that. So it's not just me; it's most of Fox will be there too.
Yeah, well, that's a great draw. Well, listen, the best of luck, and we'll talk to you again next week if everything goes well. And thank you so much for joining us on The Drive.
Thank you, Brian.
It's now 50 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk. If you're in the market for a pole barn, the two brothers that run Stoltz Co. are the guys you got to talk to. I mean, exceptional quality, craftsmanship, and fair prices. They can build that new pole barn to your specifications with your needs in mind. And that, of course, is the Stoltz Co. difference. You can use pole barns for all kinds of things. You need a classic tool or work barn. What about an extra garage or even a place to live? Flexibility is key in the design. They combine the classic post-frame barn look with the reliability of modern materials and techniques to give you a finished barn that will stand the test of times. They do not scrimp on quality. They don't cut corners. They believe their customers deserve only the best. I want you to do me a favor. I mean, really just take a moment and do this. Go to stoltzco.com, STOLTZCO.com. Take a look at some of the examples of things they've done for other people. I mean, really, these are lovely buildings. And when you look at them, you're going to go, man, I got to have me some of that. And then you just pick up the phone and call them. 615-622-5992. Stoltz Co. is where quality workmanship and great customer service is affordable. 615-622-5992. Learn more at stoltzco.com.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. There was a recent study by J.D. Power looking at how happy investors were with their advisors, and it wasn't pretty. What they found was only 11% of the respondents said that they were getting comprehensive financial planning, that the fees were clear, and that they felt that the advisor was acting in their best interest. Not a good picture, 11%. Now, one of the things that we do is we do comprehensive planning. We fit all of those bills, number one. But one of the things I want to talk about is in the financial planning process, what I think it ought to look like and what is available that people aren't getting. And one of the things is called probability analysis. So in essence, this is what we're talking about. We're trying to accumulate money for retirement, put money aside, hoping that we'll have enough so that we can have income throughout retirement. And what we find is that people have Social Security, they have pensions in their financial plan, and they also have investments. Now, with their investments, we want to do something very specific that it really requires quite an academic background to do this. And this is where we look at the cost of capital of the various things that you own in your investment portfolio. It sounds scary, it sounds really detailed, but here's the idea. Is if we look at various asset classes like large stocks and small stocks and large value and bonds and so on and so forth, we know the expected return or the cost that these entities have to pay to use your money. So we can come up with an expected return of the portfolio. We can also come up with what's called standard deviation, or how much that portfolio return may deviate from the expected return. Now that's a whole other video, but what I want to do is show you how we use this. If I look at a financial plan and I say, well, you got this area, this area, this area, what I can do is I can say, well, based on when you want to retire, this is how much income you can take, and here's the likelihood of being able to have this income survive throughout your entire life. And the way it works is this. If I take a portfolio and I say, there's the expected return, I can look at history and say, well, the way your portfolio is designed, how might your one-year returns vary from the expected return, the long-term expected return? Well, what we know from academic research is that portfolios well designed and properly managed in ways that I can't get into right now, it's too complicated, portfolios actually close in an expected return, but we don't know what the short-term returns are going to be. So what we do is we project out and say, well, what if the return that happened in 1936 is followed by the return that happened in 1975, which is followed by the return in 1995, or what if it's reversed? What if they happen in different orders? And we can do 1,000 iterations, different variations on when those and how those returns may come in. And what that does is, because we can't predict the future, what return's going to follow the other, we can figure out, is it likely that we are going to be able to take the income that we need throughout retirement from this portfolio? And if not, how can we rearrange the furniture or the portfolio to give us a higher likelihood of success? And we look at life expectancies, we look at a lot of different things, but this is what is available to people that they're not getting from the financial planning community. If you want to know more, go to paulwinkler.com, set up a free 15-minute phone call, paulwinkler.com, and come in and find out more about what we do.
The United States now has a Speaker of the House, and Tennessee Congressman Mark Green came to talk about that candidate who's now the Speaker and the process of finally electing a Speaker. It was a long, strenuous one. Some news between Israel and Hamas in that war. Also, President Biden and his comments to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Plus, some burn bans now in effect in the volunteer state. We tell you all about it right here at 5 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, we'll look forward to that, Mac Maury. And then, in the next hour, we will go through all of the things that happened today to finally get us across the goal line and find us a Speaker of the House. We've got all of these sound clips of the thing as it unfolded. And then, after that, if that weren't enough, and by gosh, don't you think it should be, then we will stop and have what is a fan favorite here, the Mac Maury's Wide World of Sports.
Oh, yeah.
And what are we talking about today, Mac? Do you know?
Between two things right now, so I'm going to decide. Might get both of them in. Maybe some baseball and some basketball today.
All right, sounding good. It's all straight ahead right here on the next hour of The Drive, 57 minutes past the hour. I want to tell you about the Wellness Institute of Nashville. Dr. Kevin Mitchell is my doctor. He can be your doctor. He's a national leader in the expertise known as spinal decompression, non-surgical spinal decompression. What a therapy that is that can help so many people with their back and neck and leg problems. I mean, if you have tingling, numbness, weakness, this thing they call neuropathy, back pain, disc bulging, disc herniation, spinal stenosis, if you've heard any of those terms used to describe your situation, then you could well benefit from spinal decompression treatment. And I speak from some personal experience, having gone through a series of treatments for my neck and back, and it has helped me. It's helped me a great deal. So if you're feeling any of those things, I want you to do this. Pick up the phone and call this number. I mean, do it. It doesn't take much to make a call and find out what's involved. 615-246-5009. Now, if you're a new patient, they've got a deal for you. Take advantage of their $23 new patient special. That means you'll get an exam, a consultation. They'll take x-rays if they're needed, or you can bring in your own MRI or x-rays if you have them. And you'll get your that will all take place, including your first treatment, for $23. Then you'll be able to get half off spinal decompression and half off the KT knee machine. Now, what is that? That's sort of like spinal decompression, except it's aimed at trying to help people with knee problems. Works the same way. You gently elongate the knee in a way that allows the therapy to get down inside deep within your knee and the healing to begin. 615-246-5009. Learn more at painisbad.com.
It is 5:01. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Sunny, 79 degrees in Nashville. Latest traffic report and a weather forecast on the way in 5 minutes. Some Speaker of the House news. Representative Mike Johnson of Louisiana is now the Speaker of the House. Tennessee Congressman Mark Green, who put his hat in the ring for a short time to try and be Speaker, joined WTN's The Drive and said that there are some representatives that wanted this process to drag out.
We wanted this thing to drag out a little longer so that it would empower people who the conference were not supportive of. And so that's probably, the best I can say of it right now. It just provided an opportunity to show that there were people actually working behind the scenes to drag it out and empower people that the conference wasn't supportive of.
And Green mentioned that Johnson's one of the more conservative members in the House and that he supports them now that he gets to work on the appropriation bills. That's a deadline of November 17th. And while hosting a joint press conference with the Australian Prime Minister today, President Biden denied, quote, demanding Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu halt the looming ground invasion of Gaza to secure the release of hostages. Karen Travers with the latest.
President Biden says he has not sought any assurances from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he'll delay a ground invasion into Gaza until the safe release of hostages.
What I have indicated to him is that if that's possible to get these folks out safely, that's what he should do. It's their decision. But I did not demand it.
The president said he's told Netanyahu if there's a real chance to get the hostages out, it should be done. Asked if the hostages are in jeopardy if there's a ground invasion, the president said, quote, obviously they're in jeopardy. But the question is whether there's a way to get them out.
And that death total sitting over 6,500 as of today. President Biden said there is no confidence in that number. Burn bans in Tennessee with a dry condition across the state. Multiple counties have issued burn bans. Here's the list. Dixon, in effect until further notice. Brentwood issued a burn ban, but they say they're going to rescind that. Just they need to see any sort of rainfall. Lawrenceburg, a bit more intentional. They've had some intense drought conditions. And in Murfreesboro, they're asking no bonfires or recreational burning until further notice. And back in the nation's capital, a new Senate report claims Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas never repaid a large part of more than $260,000 personal loan he used to buy his 40-foot luxury RV. Andy Field details.
It appears Justice Thomas only made limited interest payments on a $267,000 loan by a friend, and that the Supreme Court Justice did not report the loan on his financial disclosures or tax returns. The IRS treats a forgiven loan as income you must declare. That information released by Democrats who did the report for the Senate Finance Committee. The Supreme Court and Justice Thomas have yet to comment on those findings.
And that is the latest news, traffic, and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in the chair and on the air, bringing you news and information that you can use from around the world, across the nation, up your street, and actually even down your alley. We got it all covered right here on Super Talk. So sit back, and we'll get you home safely and bring you some information.
The Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress.
Our long national nightmare is over. The fourth time turned out to be the charm. Finally, we have a brand new Speaker of the House. Oh, I am so glad this thing is over. Yeah, it happened this afternoon, and we have a new Speaker of the House. It will be Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana. He finally acquired the votes that were needed. In fact, here is the moment when everybody, finally came to the realization that they were going to get across the goal line when Congressman Womack provided the 217th vote.
With the 217th pick in the race for Speaker, the 3rd District of Arkansas selects Mike Johnson.
And the crowd, they went wild. They have a bunch of ceremony and pomp that they have to do. They take the Speaker-elect out of the chamber, and they get people to escort him back in, and that takes a little while. And then Mike Johnson finally got to speak, and he laid out, and I think in a very effective way, the things that will make up his core principles. He feels very strongly that, as Speaker, he's the Speaker of the entire House, but he won't walk away from what he calls his core principles.
We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles, because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end. In his farewell address, thank you. In his farewell address, President Reagan explained the secret of his rapport with people. And I like to paraphrase his explanation all the time. He said, they call me the great communicator, but I really wasn't that. He said, I was just communicating great things, and they're the same great things that have guided our nation since its founding. What are those great things? I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles. The things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world. The things that have made us truly exceptional. In this time of great crisis, it is our duty to work together, as previous generations of great leaders have, to face these great challenges and solve these great problems. I will conclude with this. The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here.
And that was well received by the body as a whole. A few minutes later, Mike Johnson put his hand on what appeared to be a family Bible and took the oath of office.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter. So help you God?
I do, so help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
And with that, Mike Johnson, a Republican of Louisiana, becomes the 56th Speaker of the House of Representatives. We had on Mark Green from the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee, a man who put his hat in the ring for the speakership there for a short while, to tell us a little bit more about this man, Mike Johnson. Who is he?
This guy is a deep faith conservative, grew up the son of a firefighter who actually got injured in a big fire and was disabled, I think, when Mike was about 12 years old. He's been a good friend of mine, supported me when I moved into the chairman's seat over at Homeland. I think he has a good vision. I think he'll manage the conference very well. He's a constitutional lawyer, so he gets the Second Amendment and the First, the things that really matter. He gets the 10th Amendment too, which is really important for us. The fight isn't in Washington; it's with Washington, and he'll be far more conservative than the guy he's replacing. So I think one of the biggest lessons is the speaker. You can't tie the committee rules to the speaker and make basically the entire conference of the Congress beholding to one or two members or some number of members, and that's a big lesson. And Mike, Speaker Johnson gets it, and I think we're in a much better place. Like I said, we've got a much more conservative Speaker of the House of Representatives right now, and for Tennesseans and for America, that's an amazing and great thing.
I agree. And what I know about this guy so far, I tend to like. Again, time will tell. But he was somebody who could bring together the disparate parts of the party. I think part of it was they just got wore down. I mean, let's be honest with you. This thing's been going on for 3 weeks now, and they were under a lot of pressure to find the solution. And the solution turned out to be a Republican congressman from Louisiana who has got a very conservative voting record. He's one of the more conservative members of the House of Representatives. Democrats are not real thrilled about it, but that's what they ended up with. And now the question is, can they make the changes that will keep us from having to go through this nonsense again? In other words, there's a rule that has been passed since January that says any one member can come to the floor and call for a vote to vacate the speaker's chair. And if you can find three or four other people with you who also have their noses out of joint, then you can kick a speaker out and start the whole process over again. I think that it'll be really interesting to see if he can get that rule changed going forward. And then a very tough assignment because you have lost 3 weeks. 3 weeks have absolutely been lost to this idea that of trying to get the appropriations bills passed, and the deadline is November 17th. Can you play catch up? Have the committees been working behind the scenes so that they can rush these things to the floor and then get them over to the Senate, where the Senate is going to try to impose its will in a conference meeting that will take place? And do it before the 17th, or will you have to ask for another extension to keep the government operating? I think that it'll be a real heavy lift, but if this guy can get it accomplished, he will go a long way to making his mark as an effective Speaker of the House. And that one of the first orders of business, I think it was taking place this afternoon, a resolution was going to come to the floor to show support for the people of Israel and their time of war with Hamas. That will take place, and it's long, as he said, long overdue to do that. I like the cut of this guy's jib. I mean, to say, I had others that I thought could be a good speaker. This guy was not on my radar, wasn't on a lot of people's radar, but he seems to have a bit of quiet humility about him that I think will serve him well as an elected official, and a man who's a constitutional expert and lawyer who understands, what the Constitution means, and it's sort of burned into the very part of the human being that he is. I think that's a good thing. I think we would be well served by someone who goes in there with a deep and appreciative understanding of what our founding fathers intended in setting forth the Constitution. It's it's going to be interesting to watch. And again, I'm just glad that the national nightmare is over. Heavy lifting ahead. But again, I think there is a desire to try to get this thing done before a government shutdown comes. And if they can do that, they can really, really go a long way to restoring a bit of faith in these. And even though it was 3 weeks, I think they did finally come up with a solution. And I think that the American people are not going to have a long memory about this. In other words, if they were irritated by it, I think that memory will fade by the time we get to the elections. One of the things that will help this guy is that he is strongly endorsed by former President Donald Trump, who has been sort of staying on the sidelines, and letting it be known the people that he likes and the people he doesn't like. He did not like Emmer. And Emmer did not survive very long once that statement came out from Donald Trump. It looks like Mark Green will have the complete unfettered support of the former president, and that is a good thing given the numbers that we're seeing that to suggest that indeed he will be the nominee of the Republican Party. And if you take a look at some of the other polling that's out there, could well be the next president of the United States. It's looking pretty good with some of the polling data that's out there today. So again, we talked about it endlessly. It is over. We are now moving forward with a brand new Speaker of the House, and we'll be watching to see exactly how it all unfolds. 20 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Lord, I know there's a lot of people out there who can provide diagnoses, and, there's a pill for everything, but I think you will agree that not all diagnoses turn out to be accurate and not all pills are good for you. Listen, when you get a diagnosis on your European car and its repair needs, why don't you get a second opinion before you make a major decision? Eurofix is the home for second opinions before you spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on European vehicle repair from some diagnosis that you got somewhere. Why don't you go to Eurofix, and it could not only save your vehicle's life, could actually save you from a lot of stress. At Eurofix, you get a free 15-minute no-wrench inspection with an estimate at every visit. No high-pressure sales tactics. That's not what they're about. At Eurofix, you'll get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And at Eurofix, you never pay dealer prices. They have many locations to choose from: Franklin, 100 Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now their newest facility in Mount Juliet. Really nice. Call 844-EUROFIX or visit myEurofix.com and tell them your friend and radio buddy Brian Wilson sent you.
Hey everybody, Dan Mattis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
Mike Johnson of Louisiana, now Speaker of the House. Shots fired in a Waffle House this morning, and Metro Police Chief John Drake out with a statement following the apparent suicide of his wanted estranged son. Those stories coming up 30 minutes after the hour of 5 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's time for Mac Morey's Wide World of Sports.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat.
That's right. You know him, you love him. You can't live without him. Here is the host of our program, the one, the only, Mac Morey, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, everybody.
Yeah, it is. It's Wednesday all day long. So, people really love this little segment. They
got really
hear a
excited,
lot of good comments about it, and I keep telling them, yeah. Well, it's like what I love about it, Mac, is you do news and you do it well, but there's just a sparkle in your eye. And just a gleam that sort of overtakes your personality, such as it is. Whenever you start talking about sports, I'm sorry, I can't hand you a straight compliment without it needs to be a backhanded compliment.
Exactly.
That's what we do. But anyway, what are we going to talk about today, Mac?
I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about this sort of stuff. I figured we haven't talked much about Major League Baseball, and the playoffs have now come to the climax. The World Series has been decided, and it is the Arizona Diamondbacks versus the Texas Rangers. Yeah. Could have had the Phillies. I think a lot more people probably would have been excited because it's fun to either, kind of glean on to a great sports town like Philadelphia, or it's fun to, hate a team like that. Yeah, and be like, screw them. No, that's not fun. They're mean fans.
They're the worst fans in America. They once booed Santa Claus.
Yeah, exactly. And, I showed the other day, it was Tuesdays, it was Game 7. It was yesterday, Game 7 for the Phillies in Philadelphia against the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are now in the World Series. That game was to decide who got in and in the NLCS, and I showed Chris a video of a security guard in Philadelphia walking around the city greasing the bottoms of the poles before the game because if Philly would have won, you would have had, drunk dudes climbing up the poles.
Hey,
and
not just one. I'm sure since they lost, it probably still came in handy.
You're actually right. Maybe that's even more for the fact that they might lose. I know some people are excited about the World Series. Obviously, you've got the Diamondbacks and the Rangers. The Rangers 90-72 on the year. The Diamondbacks 84-78. I can't remember the exact stat, but I believe it was the teams with the top 4 records didn't win a playoff series this year. Baseball is just one of the most unpredictable things once the playoffs, once it gets to the playoffs, and it's exciting. It is exhilarating when I catch the end of a playoff game. I do get excited, but I find myself during the long 162 game regular season kind of being like out of it and not really understanding, keeping up with it. It is.
Sure. Yeah.
And I know, Brian, 100% when you were growing up, and Chris, even when you were growing up, that was something that a lot of people did watch and keep up with, and baseball was a huge topic. And
I'm one of them. Yeah.
You were one of them.
Yeah,
Great.
I used to watch. I'm a big Cubs fan. I grew up that way, and I would watch every game that I could watch. And then, of course, in my adult years, once I was able to, pay for the MLB stuff and get all the games, I would watch every game that I could.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you.
I didn't know that about you either. That's cool.
I kind of they fell out of favor with me after they kind of blew things up over the last few years and sold off all their franchise talent. So I haven't watched a Cubs game in a couple years. So I've kind of fallen away from baseball. But
the sport itself, you stayed attracted to, you stayed liking it. It wasn't.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Because I know a lot of people have fallen out of love with the sport. I'm kind of just wondering what happened. I wasn't there for a lot of that.
I think it's different when you actually go to the stadium and experience the game,
sure.
and they have the peanuts and the Cracker Jacks and the seventh inning stretch, and you do all that. I remember growing up as a kid. Every Saturday afternoon, my dad would come home at noon from work. He worked half a day on Saturday, and some baseball game would be on, right? And it would be basically on the TV, and then shortly after he started watching, he'd be asleep for most of the afternoon. This lazy boy. But it was always on in the background, and I started watching, and there was a guy back in those days who was an announcer color announcer by the name of Dizzy Dean.
Ooh, that's cool.
And I mean, and so you remember, I remember those very fondly. And then as I grew older, I went to Washington, D.C., and when they got the Nationals, man, I'm telling you, that was a big dog deal. Really transformed that town in a lot of different ways, because they brought in a stadium, and then it built up around the stadium, and it became a very nice area of town, and before it had not been. But the other thing about it is that a lot of people in Washington, for some reason, can get off at 2:00 in the afternoon to go to a baseball game.
There it is.
Yeah, so they had a lot of support even for those afternoon games.
Yeah, the game has changed, has changed a lot of the last decade.
That's what I hear.
A lot of free agency that they've kind of followed along with basketball, where a lot of teams are building their teams now, trying to. Yeah, I mean, because players don't stay with the franchise for their careers like they used to. There's a lot more money involved in the game, obviously, and they've implemented some rules and that haven't been really all that great fan favorites. And then the whole thing with pitching is just not what it used to be. If your starter goes 6 innings, he's kind of done his thing, and that's it. You don't see complete games much anymore.
Games. That's such a waste, because that was seeing those clips. That's so awesome to go a whole 9 innings to lead that game. That's awesome.
Yeah. I wonder how much the Moneyball concept has impacted baseball and made it different, either better for the better or the worse. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that technology has played a big part in it. All the analytics that go into the games now, it's a different game than it was 20 years ago. But I still like baseball. But I'll say this World Series, Rangers, Diamondbacks, it's probably going to be one of the lowest rated in a while.
I was just about to say, I'm excited to see the ratings after the series. The series starts Friday at 7, so that's the baseball news. And then real quickly in basketball, Memphis Grizzlies home opener tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans. So exciting stuff if you're a basketball fan.
Let me throw another one.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I don't care.
All right. And on that note, it's 31 minutes now past the hour. Mac Mooring takes off his sports hat, put back on his news hat, because it's time for the news on Super Talk.
5:31, I'm Mac Morey with your top story. 77 degrees, full weather forecast, latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. A new Speaker of the House has been elected, Mike Johnson from Louisiana. And Tennessee Representative Mark Green joined the drive on WTN and discussed some appropriation bills that now need to be finished by November 17th.
There's a strong chance we don't get them all finished. There'll be some percentage of discretionary spending that's still, right now we're already like 60 or 70% passed, because the Senate passed, or the House passed. For example, my approach side, the Homeland approach, we passed Department of Defense approach. So the big chunk items, most of them have gone through. We've got several more, but we'll get more of those done, and then we may or may not have a few left over.
And as far as new Speaker of the House Mike Johnson goes, Green said that he thought he was a great choice. He was one of the most conservative members in the House. Crime right now in Tennessee. A man opened fire inside of a Waffle House early this morning in Nashville, ended in one person injured. An uncle and nephew were inside eating when the man went inside, took his gun out, and that's when the nephew tried to take the gun away. The nephew was shot in the shoulder by one of 2 shots fired during their physical altercation. The uncle then helped to get that shooter to the ground, and 2 women who were with the shooter, they left, and they were later stopped by police on I-40. And then right now in Nashville, Metro Police Chief John Drake is out with a new statement after his son's apparent suicide.
Chief Drake says it wasn't the outcome he prayed for, but he thanked the members of law enforcement for, as he put it, working diligently to try to bring his son into custody without anyone getting hurt. John Drake Jr. died last night after police say he shot himself while hiding from police officers whom he had led on a chase to Edgewood. John Drake Jr. was wanted for the shooting that injured 2 Laverne police officers on Saturday. He was on the TBI's most wanted list. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And that is the latest news, traffic, weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Well, this is that time of year, man, where it can be really warm in the afternoon, like right now, 76 degrees outside here in bucolic Watertown. But in the evening, it will be cool. You need your heater. You need your air conditioner. You need both working. Either side starts to malfunction. Do what I would do. Pick up the phone and call the folks at Busy Bee, 615-775-7833. They will come right over to your hive, and they'll get you up and running as soon as humanly possible. That's what they do. Now, many times, it's an easy fix. Sometimes you have a system that may be really, really old, and it's just the time to start thinking about replacing it. They'll give you the options either way, to keep it alive or to go ahead and replace it. But if you do decide to replace it, you're not going to find a better value on HVAC and plumbing replacement systems than you'll find at Busy Bee. The way you keep things running is you do a lot of preventative maintenance, and that's what the Beehive Club is about. I'm about to re-up again because I think this is great. For as little as $99, you get 3 thorough maintenance services on your systems, one aimed at the heating, one aimed at cooling, one aimed at plumbing. You'll have no overtime charges 24/7 and 10% off all repairs. Busy Bee Plumbing and Heating and Cooling is your official Rude Pro partner. For satisfaction guaranteed, call Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, 615-775-7833, online at busybeehvac.com. Good afternoon, everybody. 39 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson, and this is The Drive for this 25th day of October. I was just checking in my forecast, because today is just a beautiful day. I mean, it hit almost 80 degrees today.
I think it was 80 here downtown.
Yeah, and there was abundant, as they say, abundant sunshine. And I'm trying to decide, if I, while we have this, look, Saturday, golly, 81 is the forecast high.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're talking about really nice temperatures. And then I think next Monday, maybe a little bit of rain.
Just wait.
Yeah, just wait. And then, boy, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, It'll be cooler, but a lot of sunshine. So I'm trying to figure out when I take the show over to the pool.
You better do it this week.
I think it's going to happen this week because if it doesn't happen, I think Friday is the day.
Yeah, Friday looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah, Friday, and we won't do the whole show over there, but we'll take it over for part of the show. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. It'll be a little cloudy, but nonetheless, it'll be warm and pleasant. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So how can we expand upon this idea?
I mean, there's lots of ways we could expand on
Yeah, I know.
Not the best ideas, maybe, but
many of them was involve having a bunch of people come to my house uninvited. Yeah, we don't. Maybe that's not the best idea. Well, anyway, we'll think about it, but we're gonna try to do that. Me and the dog will hang out on the back porch and try to take it there. It's like when you were in high school. Did you ever do this to your team? Hey, can we have class outside today?
Oh, yes.
Did you ever talk to? And of course, it was just a way to get to blow off having to actually do any real schoolwork.
Exactly.
Yeah, but can we go to the quadrangle? Did you have a quadrangle in your school?
No, we just had a outside. That's all we had.
No, that'd be great. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? All right. Well, we'll see what we can do about that. In the meantime, not a pleasant story, a very sad story to bring you. We have finally seen the end to the manhunt for John Drake Jr., and it did not end well. It all started to unfold at about 6 o'clock last night, about 24 hours ago, just a little less than 24 hours ago, when John Drake Jr., age 38, apparently approached some individuals at a home on Antioch Pike and demanded their gold Chrysler 200 at gunpoint. Drake then got into the car and drove away. According to Don Aaron, Metro Police spokesperson, a short time later, Metro Police saw the Chrysler near the intersection of Thompson Lane and Patricia Drive. They began a pursuit. There was a short chase. Officers followed Drake Jr. until he eventually drove into the Edge Hill area onto 15th Avenue South, where he crashed the Chrysler into a parked car. Drake Jr. then got out of the car, ran behind a shed at a home in the 1400 block of 15th Avenue South. TBI said authorities responded to the scene and then, amidst all that, heard the sound of a muffled gunshot from the shed. When officers moved in to investigate, they found that Drake had killed himself, apparently a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was the estranged son of Metro Nashville Police Chief John Drake, and Chief Drake put out a statement, a very sad thing, of course. He said earlier that he had done his best to try to be an influence in the life of his son when he was young, up until the time he became a teenager. But after he left home, he began a long life of crime. And at the time of his death, he had 59 different encounters with law enforcement, some of them violent. Here's what Chief John Drake had to say. I am grateful to the members of the law enforcement community, including many officers from this department who worked diligently since Saturday to locate my son and bring him into custody. It was my prayer that no harm would come to him or anyone else. I am heartbroken and saddened by the outcome. He went on to say that he appreciated the understanding that was shown to his family. Quote, I appreciate the condolences and the kind words of support as my family and I privately mourn our loss. What a sad affair for his family. What a tragic ending to this thing. But nonetheless, this is I think one of those things you can do your very best to raise a young child, but at some point, you've got to release them into the world, and you really can have no control over what happens at that point. You are not their legal guardian, not their legal responsibility, and there's nothing you can do once they start down the wrong path, it would seem. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell sent his sympathies to Chief John Drake. It was a tragic end to John Drake Jr.'s life, and our heart goes out to Chief Drake and his family during this very difficult time. I'm very concerned, however, now that this whole thing is over. it was an interesting story. Sadly, these things, what made it interesting? Well, it was the fact that the guy was the son of the chief of Nashville. And that made people look at the story perhaps in a way that they wouldn't look at other crime stories. It had a personal human element to it that made it an interesting story to report. And a lot of, all the stations did cover it. Everybody did cover it in a comprehensive way. But, I'm very concerned about a situation where a guy can have 40, 50 different kind of encounters with law enforcement, and yet he's still on the street. He's still out there on the street. And some of these things were violent crimes. He was a registered sex offender 3 times, according to the rap sheet that I read the other day. 3 different instances. He'd done things that put him in conflict with the law with regard to sex crimes. He was a violent criminal at times. And again, how does this guy continue to be on the street when you've had that many different encounters with law enforcement? I mean, shouldn't at some point, after 59 encounters, and many of them violent, shouldn't there be a long-term incarceration? Shouldn't the person actually go to jail and spend some time there? I mean, you give somebody maybe a break on the first one, maybe even on the second one. But by the time you get to 3 or 4, I mean, you've got to make a decision about whether or not this person can truly be rehabilitated and can be trusted to be put back out into society. Or is he just going to do the same thing again? Look, I hear from a lot of police officers who are listeners to this program. They are absolutely listeners to this program. They talk to me and they let me know, things when things are going on, and I greatly appreciate that. But what I hear from police officers that I talk to, my sources in the community in Metro Davidson County, tell me that, look, it's not because the police aren't making the arrests. They are making the arrests. And then they are generally, sometimes even violent criminals can be out on bond even before their shift is over. That's how quickly it happens. And then it seems that, somewhere there's a breakdown. Okay, where can the breakdown be? Well, could it be in the arrest process? I don't think that's where it is. I think the arrests are being made. So is it then in the prosecution of these cases? I think that's where one of the big problems is. I mean, we are told that by the district attorney that they don't have the ability, the funding that is needed to take everybody that needs to go to trial. That they have to limit the number of cases that they take to trial because they just don't have the resources or the courts. Well, let's get us some more courts. Let's get us some more resources. Some of this community, policing stuff is getting millions and millions of dollars in federal grants. Maybe we would be better equipped to handle the crime problem that's getting pretty ugly in Nashville right now if we took some of that money and we hired more prosecutors, or we made room for more courts, and more judges, so we can prosecute these cases. If that's the hang up, if that's where the bottleneck is, then let's fix that. I also think that there is a willingness on the part of the prosecutors many times to cut a deal rather than take it to trial. Yeah, let's cut a deal, let's make sure that, we don't have to take this one to trial. And then there's some kind of lesser charge is come to. We come to agreement on a lesser charge. That happens all the time, even with people who've been involved in violent crimes in which they used guns. To me, if there was a gun used in the commission of a violent crime, there ain't no plea deal. There should never be a plea deal. I mean, that is a sign that you've got a real hardened criminal in your case, and you need to do something about that. So let's maybe step. I mean, and look, all you have to do is thumb through, and you'll see very quickly that this town is getting mean, and it's getting mean because we're not taking the violent, dangerous criminals off the streets. A shooting at the Waffle House down in Stewart's Ferry Pike, and one person was injured, Physical fight just inside the door. Man injured after shots fired inside the Donaldson Waffle House. Fired 3 to 4 shots, they say. Suspect sought after 3 injured in shooting outside a gas station in South Nashville. This happened at the GC Mart on 10 Fairfield Avenue. 3 people, a man, a woman, and a security guard, injured in the shooting. Wow. Arrest made after a man found stabbed inside a Madison hotel. There's another violent. And then it spills over to the surrounding community sometimes. Franklin teen charged after homes hit by bullet in Spring Hill. Let's refocus. Do some old-fashioned police work and some old-fashioned law enforcement prosecution of violent criminals and see if we can't make this a safer place. You can have your community policing things, but let's not give up on the idea of taking bad, violent people off the streets. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And the public has a right to be safe. So let's get after it, shall we? 51 minutes past the hour. Let me talk to you about Legend Steakhouse, Johnny Fleeman's place. If you haven't had a Johnny Fleeman steak in a while, maybe you want to stop in tonight and have some dinner. I'm telling you, it's good. But also think about them for lunch if you can. They come with a meat and 2. That's 1 meat and 2 sides, and cornbread muffins or yeast rolls. You get to choose. Here's the meats: fried pork chops, Smoky Mountain meatloaf, things like fried catfish or slow-cooked pot roast with gravy. And then it's really about the sides, isn't it? Well, there are 14 different vegetables and casseroles to choose from. This is a good old-fashioned home cooking, the way your mom used to make. In fact, these recipes were borrowed from Johnny's mother some 30 years ago, and he just never gave them back. Legend Steakhouse has multiple locations across Middle Tennessee. It is a place that you can get good food at a fair price. And what else could you ask for? If you're in Davidson County, check out their Smyrna location just off Almaville Road. Open 7 days a week for lunch and dinner. LegendSteakhouse.com for locations to make an online order. It's a local Tennessee company with some 34 years. And by the way, Johnny wants you to know, if you're a veteran, veterans eat for free on Veterans Day. Don't forget it. That's coming up. 52 minutes now past the hour.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. There was a recent study by J.D. Power looking at how happy investors were with their advisors, and it wasn't pretty. What they found was only 11% of the respondents said that they were getting comprehensive financial planning, that the fees were clear, and that they felt that the advisor was acting in their best interest. Not a good picture, 11%. Now, one of the things that we do is we do comprehensive planning. We fit all of those bills, number one. But one of the things I want to talk about is in the financial planning process, what I think it ought to look like and what is available that people aren't getting. And one of the things is called probability analysis. So in essence, this is what we're talking about. We're trying to accumulate money for retirement, put money aside, hoping that we'll have enough so that we can have income throughout retirement. And what we find is that people have Social Security, they have pensions in their financial plan, and they also have investments. Now, with their investments, we want to do something very specific that it really requires quite an academic background to do this. And this is where we look at the cost of capital of the various things that you own in your investment portfolio. It sounds scary, it sounds really detailed, but here's the idea. Is if we look at various asset classes like large stocks and small stocks and large value and bonds and so on and so forth, we know the expected return or the cost that these entities have to pay to use your money. So we can come up with an expected return of the portfolio. We can also come up with what's called standard deviation, or how much that portfolio return may deviate from the expected return. Now that's a whole other video, but what I want to do is show you how we use this. If I look at a financial plan and I say, well, you got this area, this area, this area, what I can do is I can say, well, based on when you want to retire, this is how much income you can take, and here's the likelihood of being able to have this income survive throughout your entire life. And the way it works is this. If I take a portfolio and I say, there's the expected return, I can look at history and say, well, the way your portfolio is designed, how might your one-year returns vary from the expected return, the long-term expected return? Well, what we know from academic research is that portfolios well designed and properly managed in ways that I can't get into right now, it's too complicated, portfolios actually close in an expected return, but we don't know what the short-term returns are going to be. So what we do is we project out and say, well, what if the return that happened in 1936 is followed by the return that happened in 1975, which is followed by the return in 1995, or what if it's reversed? What if they happen in different orders? And we can do 1,000 iterations, different variations on when those and how those returns may come in. And what that does is, because we can't predict the future, what return's going to follow the other, we can figure out, is it likely that we are going to be able to take the income that we need throughout retirement from this portfolio? And if not, how can we rearrange the furniture or the portfolio to give us a higher likelihood of success? And we look at life expectancies, we look at a lot of different things, but this is what is available to people that they're not getting from the financial planning community. If you want to know more, go to paulwinkler.com, set up a free 15-minute phone call, paulwinkler.com, and come in and find out more about what we do.
Let me tell you about the folks over at Everseal and explain exactly what Everseal is. I mean, it's sort of an interesting concept. You may not have heard about it before. The technology actually has been around for ages. It was used in industrial applications, and the folks over at Everseal figured out how to provide this permanent solution for sealing your exterior wood and concrete at a price that home and business owners can actually afford. That's right. Your exterior wood and concrete can be sealed in an amazing way. The process starts with a deep cleaning to make sure your wood and concrete look as good as it possibly can look. And then they apply their patented sealant, which absorbs all the way through the product, the wood or the concrete, to become a permanent part of wood or concrete. And here's the end result. Listen closely. It will prevent any further deterioration for the next 30 to 50 years. Think about all the time you'll save over 30 to 50 years if you don't have to do this every year. Think about all the money you'll save if you don't have to do this every year. I mean, do it once and just enjoy your exterior concrete or your exterior wood deck, for example. You don't have to think about it again. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, why don't you reach out to Steve Nelson and the team over at Everseal? Here's the number, 844-EVER-USA. Again, 844-EVER-USA. And if you want to just learn more about the whole process, learn more about Everseal, go to ever-seal.com.
Six o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 75 degrees on Music Row. The latest forecast and traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. Some Speaker of the House news. Tennessee Representative Mark Green, who put his hat in the ring for Speaker for a short amount of time, joined WTN's The Drive to discuss what kind of Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana he thinks he'll be.
He's been a good friend of mine, supported me when I moved into the chairman's seat over at Homeland. I think he has a good vision. I think he'll manage the conference very well. He's a constitutional lawyer, so he gets the Second Amendment and the First, the things that really matter. He gets the 10th Amendment too, which is really important for us. The fight isn't in Washington; it's with Washington, and so I think he'll be very good.
Green called Johnson one of the more conservative members of the caucus. The representative also mentioned that there were members that purposely wanted this process to last as long as possible. He mentioned that putting himself in that nomination process proved that quickly, and now they get to work on these appropriation bills that have been set off due to the House being paralyzed. There's a deadline for those, November 17th. And some news on the war between Israel and Hamas. President Biden sharing his thoughts on the looming Israeli ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. Karen Travers tells us what the president said in this afternoon's news conference.
President Biden reiterated his position that Israel has a right and a responsibility to respond to the attacks by Hamas and said his administration will ensure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself. But the president said that Hamas is hiding behind Palestinian civilians, calling that, quote, despicable and cowardly. Still, he said that puts an added burden on Israel in its response.
Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel.
And that death total over there now 6,500. President Biden said today he has no confidence in that number. Crime right now in Tennessee. Channel 4 says that a man was arrested after shooting two people outside of Nissan Stadium. It was yesterday when Brian Hunter shot several times at two victims. He almost hit a curb while driving, which prompted one of the victims to ask if he was okay. And that's when Hunter fired the shots. Once police were notified, Hunter led them on a police chase until he crashed in a field. Hunter had to be tased in order to get under control. Officials found a handgun, a rifle, a gram of cocaine, and a gram of marijuana in the vehicle, and Hunter was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and reckless driving. And after developing from a tropical storm into a Category 5 hurricane in a matter of just 12 hours, Hurricane Otis slammed into Mexico's Pacific coast early this morning. Connor Finnegan says the storm's rapid intensification caught meteorologists by surprise.
Hurricane Otis was the strongest storm on record to hit Mexico's Pacific coast. Communications and travel to the southern state Guerrero have been largely cut off by wind damage and landslides, making damage assessments difficult. Mexico's president pledged support after deploying thousands of troops before the storm to assist with preparations. Connor Finnegan, ABC News, Mexico City.
And that's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Good afternoon, everybody. Or I say we should say good evening at this point. A lovely evening out there, by the way. Just took the bulldog back home. And it is just so pleasant outside. Glad you're with us this evening. We're going to finish strong here with more stuff for the next hour as we then hand it over to Mark Levin, the great one, and he will carry on throughout the evening. So, buckle up, everybody. Be careful getting home. We want you to get home safely. And I want to spend some time talking about, let's talk about 2024 politics for a moment, because it's never too soon to start talking about an election that's still more than a year away. But I think you have to look at it, to know where things are. And again, I hear from people all the time saying, Wilson, you're always giving us these poll numbers. I don't believe in the polls. I don't trust the polls. And here's what I would say to you about that. I think what happens generally is if you like the poll, then you believe it. If you don't like the poll, you don't believe it. But I think the other part of that is that you need to understand what polls truly are. They're a snapshot in time of where we are at the moment. They're not projections for the future. They're not like some magical ball that will tell you exactly what's going to happen in the days ahead. And people say, well, then why do they sometimes miss it on Election Day? And I will tell you this. And any person who truly understands politics understands this concept, that there are always about 15 to 20% of the electorate who sit on the sidelines until the very last moment and don't jump in and don't make a decision about how they're going to vote until literally the last hours of the election. And so, you never can predict if they have told pollsters that they're undecided, they're undecided. And sometimes that can be, 4, 5, 6% of the electorate, let's say, and that can swing an election one way or the other if it's close. And all of our elections have been close. So, you need to understand what polls are and what they are not. And then you need to also understand that no one poll should be taken too seriously. But what you do look at is a series of polls that all have the same basic outcome. That tends to tell you something's going on. And I'll tell you what's going on right now is not good for the Biden administration in any way, form, or fashion. From thehill.com, warning signs flash for Biden in recent polling. Warning signs are flashing in recent polls, with several showing him locked in a tight race with former President Trump, and some even show him trailing his presumed rival, underscoring the extent to which the presidential election will likely come down to the wire. Biden's campaign has emphasized that the election is still more than a year away and that the president is putting in the work to mobilize voters. To rally around his reelection bid. Still, the combination of the close polling with Biden's low approval numbers has some political observers cautious about Biden's chances in 2024. Take, for example, Dave Wasserman from the highly respected and nonpartisan Cook Political Report. He posted on what used to be called Twitter, now X, that he believed Biden would lose the election to an indicted Trump if the election were held today. He noted that Biden had a positive favorability rating, while Trump's was about 41% in 2020, but Trump still was only 42 votes away in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin from winning. Now fast forward to 2024 with tied national polls, 40% Biden approval rating, and more economic pessimism, growing migrant international crises, and the potential for Robert F. Kennedy to double Jill Stein's pull on campuses. Wasserman said Biden is in absolutely dire shape. Biden's apparent challenges have been underscored in recent days by a string of polls painting a neck-and-neck race with Trump. The former president led Biden by 2 points in a national Emerson College poll released Friday, 4 points by a Bloomberg Morning Consult poll from Thursday of the 7 key swing states. We told you about this: Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And another Emerson poll out of Pennsylvania released earlier this month found Trump with a 9-point lead over the president in the swingiest of all the swing states, Pennsylvania. Wow, 9-point lead. Biden has been dogged by approval ratings that have remained in the low 40s. And so here we go. Let me just run through some of the latest numbers, the numbers that just came in today. And they give you some sense of exactly how this is starting to go the wrong way and why Democrats are chewing their fingernails right now. In a Harris X poll, Trump versus Biden nationwide, if the election were held today, they believe that Trump would win by 4 points. 4 points. University of Texas poll, Trump versus Biden, Trump would win by, are you ready for this one? 8 points. Wow. Looking in the, in Missouri, they say, show me, and they, the show me state, right? Well, if it was Trump versus Biden, just in Missouri, Trump would win by 13 points. If you calculate it's Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy, Trump wins by 15 points. Many people look at that poll and they say, well, wait a minute, I thought Kennedy was supposed to take away from Trump. I'm not seeing that. So far in the polls that have included Kennedy, it seems that one of two things happen. Either it helps Trump or it takes equally from each category. And here's the thing. Trust me on this. Kennedy may be polling like 13, 14% right now. And that can be, a game changer, can be a kingmaker in some ways. But I suspect that Kennedy's support among at least Republicans is going to go way down in the days ahead. No effort has been made as yet to characterize Kennedy for what he truly is. I think Pete Hegseth had it right on some issues. Moderate Republican voters look at Kennedy and they like, some of the situations and some of the things he stands for. They may look at him and say, well, I really like his take on vaccines, or I really think he's got the right take on this. But when you start to really lay out, exactly what Kennedy is, that he's been something of a chameleon, I think, in politics, and he does and says whatever he needs to say or do to get elected. But when you look at some of his past positions and the fact that, he has been a longtime Democrat who has supported every liberal Democrat cause that ever came down the pike, and when you start looking exactly what he believes and the positions that he takes, I think a great number of moderate and conservative voters are going to say, I don't think that guy's for me. I think that in the end of the equation, once we characterize exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is and what he is not, I think that it will hurt Democrats a lot more than it hurts Republicans. And I think that will change. Now, these numbers are looking really, really good for Trump, who's in the process right now of going through a trial and has several other trials against him. Has, I don't know, I forget how many counts, 95 counts that have been leveled against him that he's going to have to be fighting over the course of the next year. All of this stuff, doesn't seem to phase one whit how Republicans and conservatives feel about the former president. The more that he gets attacked, the more they run over to his side, feeling that the whole process is completely unfair. Wouldn't it be something if all of these Democrat efforts to try to smear the former president ended up actually growing his number, making his number bigger, so that, it was like they were thinking they were going to take him down, and all they did was they built him back up. That's the disgust that people have with what's going on in America today in the political process. And they are moving in greater numbers to support Trump. It's having the reverse effect. And I think in the grand scheme of things, I say he has a very good chance of winning the election. Now, the other side of the equation is, how long will Democrats stand by and watch this thing go down the toilet for Joe Biden? I mean, how long will they stand by and not try to bring forth somebody else who can be a big name? What would be the event? What would be the thing that would have to happen for Democrats to say, okay, I'm sorry, that's enough. We've got to do something. I think what it would be is another huge misstep on the stage by Joe Biden. If he were to take another fall, if he were to do another face plant on a stage, if he were to have another couple of moments like he had, the last one was in Israel on Air Force One as they were coming back, and he seemed to be almost incoherent in talking to members of the press. I mean, it's almost, you see the guy, he's good for about 20 minutes. I mean, I really do believe they give him a 5-hour energy drink and a shot of Prevagen and maybe a B12 shot or something. They send him out there and he's good for about 20 minutes, but you can see it almost after about 20 minutes, he starts to fade. He starts to sag. And that's when these things happen, where he takes a face plant or he makes a mistake. I mean, he's walking around the lawn. We had the Australian Prime Minister here today. He's walking around the lawn. They did a big dog and pony show. They really put on a big, for a state visit like that, they put on a big show, and the bands are there, and there's a parade, and there's a lot of saluting that goes on, and you have to review the troops and the whole 9 yards. And he seemed to be lost in his own backyard. You actually see the military aide guiding him with his hand, saying, "No, we're going this way. We're going this way." Because he never knows where he's going, never knows what the plan is. If they briefed him, he's forgotten it. So he continues to look very frail, feeble, and quite candidly in cognitive decline. It's every time you see the guy, it becomes more and more clear that he's not functioning at full capacity. And can we afford to have a president that doesn't do that? I think many people are coming to the conclusion that, you know what, the economy was pretty good under Trump. Our border was secure under Trump. The world wasn't on fire under Trump because everybody respected or feared him. One way or the other, it was a much better situation than we have now with Biden. In 2 years, the thing is completely deteriorated, and I think people are making a decision that I want to go back to what we had before. I expect that if the Democrats are going to make a move, they're going to have to do it pretty quick. I've been saying that for a while. I still don't think he'll be the nominee. But how that resolves itself is not clear to me. 21 past the hour now. I'm 6 o'clock. Genesis Diamonds. One of the things I love about Genesis Diamonds, they're always bringing in new and fresh jewelry and diamonds. You're never going to see the same old thing when you go there. Every time it's something different. With diamonds, they're always bringing in fresh cut stones straight from the world's best diamond cutters. Every size you can imagine, including the larger, rarer diamonds, 3, 5, even 10 carats. Nobody has a diamond selection that can come anywhere close. And with designer jewelry, Genesis has partnered with all the top designers from New York and Los Angeles, and they are on the cutting edge of when it comes to what's in style, what's hot, what's new, what's different. The stuff you see at Genesis, you will not find at other stores, guaranteed. So it's a constantly changing, constantly moving inventory, always new selections. There's another reason why Genesis dominates the jewelry scene here in Nashville and why people drive hours or more to be able to shop at this amazing store. Huge selection, uncompromising quality, unbeatable value, ironclad warranties, and white-glove customer service. Genesis Diamonds and luxury pre-owned Rolexes as well. And some new Rolexes have just come in. Genesis, official jeweler of the Tennessee Titans, Green Hills and Cool Springs.
Hey everybody, Dan Mattis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual Radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
25, make it 26 past the hour. We now have a new Speaker of the House. He is Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana. Thank goodness that's done. And the House is already back to business. They took a position today, a resolution affirming support for Israel. It passed by 412 to 10. Those Democrats voting no: Tlaib, Bush, Bowman, Carson, Green of Texas, AOC, Lee of Pennsylvania, Ramirez, and Omar. There was one Republican vote against the measure, came from, I think it's Congressman Massey of Kentucky. 6 voted present: J.L. Powell, Castro, Velasquez, Quesar, Garcia of Illinois, and Presley, according to what I'm reading here today on my X feed. So there is that. Over in the Senate side today, there was a hearing about the border, and Senator John Kennedy, boy, I tell you, this really hacked you off, was asking the assorted members of the dais, who were all Biden administration officials from the Department of Homeland Security, what should be very basic questions that somebody on the dais should have been able to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Morant, since President Biden's been president, how many non-American citizens have come into our country illegally or on the basis of a claim of asylum?
Thank you, Senator. HSI, as an investigative agency, is...
do you know the number?
No, Senator.
You're a senior member of Homeland Security, are you not?
That's correct.
Does anybody know the number?
Anyone? Anyone?
None of you know the number.
No, nobody knows.
Try 8 million. Now, of that 8 million, how many were children, Mr. Morant?
I don't have that number.
You don't know. Does anybody know?
Anyone? Anyone here? Please?
None of you know.
No, nobody knows.
Isn't that special?
Isn't that special?
Let's assume half. Okay. 8 million is 4 Nebraskas. Right? 4 new states. Let's assume, I don't think it's as high, half of them are children. How many of those 8 million people are still here? Do any of you know? Okay. How many of those 8 million are claiming asylum? You don't know? How many of them claim asylum and don't show up for their hearing? Nobody knows? How many of them claim asylum, don't show up for the hearing, and President Biden has deported them?
Nobody is raising a hand.
You don't know? How many of them have claimed asylum, shown up for their asylum hearing, and been denied asylum and been deported? You don't know.
No one had any answers. How embarrassing is that? The Biden administration doesn't have a clue as to what's going on the border and can't characterize it, can't quantize it at all. Senator Hawley of Missouri asked some really piercing questions about refugee settlement and children. Some of the highlights from that particular exchange.
Have you read that children are scrubbing dishes? They are operating heavy machinery. They are delivering meals. They are harvesting coffee. They are working construction. They are working as housekeepers. They are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid. They are not going to school. They are not cared for. They are not giving meals. Almost all of it illegally. Are you aware of that? That's a yes or no.
Yes.
Aware of it, but unable to do anything about it. It is a humanitarian crisis. It is a child abuse issue. It is so many things. The Biden administration's border policies, the gift that just keeps on giving, but not in a good way. 30 minutes now past the hour. Let me tell you about the folks over at DT McCall. If you need an appliance, if you need furniture, if you need something for your house, a bedroom suite, whatever it is, you're going to find it at DT McCall's. Huge selection of all those things. And that's what I love about DT McCall's is that you go over there and you may have a rough idea of what you want, or maybe you and the missus have a different idea of what you want, but you walk through and you can find there before you something that everybody can agree upon. That's the way it worked for me and Cabana Wife. We got a wonderful sectional for our living room, and people comment about it every time they come in. Where did you get this? DT McCall. How many times have you purchased an appliance and played that little game where the big box stores charge you extra for delivery and setup and haul away, or the cords and hoses that are needed to make the thing work? At DT McCall's, you get an honest price that includes delivery, setup, and haul away. You'll never have that upcharge game. You'll get a good price, and it's a real price. DT McCall's has been around for 100 years, and they have a reputation for doing everything they can to sell you products that are made in Middle Tennessee, so you're keeping your dollars at home. That's a good thing, isn't it? 5 convenient locations, and if you haven't been to one, you got to go to one. Just go to their website to find out more. It's dtmccalls.com. It's 38 minutes now past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. In the next 22 minutes, we'll wrap things up here on the drive and then hand it over to Mark Levin, the great one. He'll be carrying on throughout the rest of the evening. We have a new speaker, a Speaker of the House. His name is Representative Mike Johnson. He is a Republican of Louisiana. He becomes the 56th Speaker of the House of Representatives. I find in the history of the country, there's only been 56 speakers. That's something. Had a bunch of them lately. We're going through them more quickly these days. But who is this guy? Well, somebody who knows him better than I do is Congressman Mark Green. from the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee, a man who actually put his name into the hopper to be considered as Speaker there toward the end. Didn't work out for him, but he's very happy with Mike Johnson. And we asked him a little bit about the guy. Who is he? Tell us a little bit about Mike Johnson and what kind of speaker you think he's going to be.
I think he's going to be great on a lot of levels. This guy is a deep faith conservative. Grew up the son of a firefighter who actually got injured in a big fire and was disabled, I think, when Mike was about 12 years old. He's been a good friend of mine, supported me when I moved into the chairman's seat over at Homeland. I think he has a good vision. I think he'll manage the conference very well. He's a constitutional lawyer, so he gets the Second Amendment and the First, the things that really matter. He gets the 10th Amendment too, which is really important for us. The fight isn't in Washington; it's with Washington, and so I think he'll be very good.
He spent some time talking about his core principles, which I thought were really, really excellent, and he seems to be, from all outward appearance, a man who cares deeply about conservative ideas.
Absolutely, he is he's one of the more conservative. You can look at the voting records, and he's right there with myself and some of the other guys in Tennessee, most of the guys in Tennessee. So he's going to he'll be far more conservative than the guy he's replacing.
So talk about the process, which has been so elongated and elaborate, and a lot of votes behind closed doors. What was your impression about that whole process as it unfolded?
Well, there's some inside baseball there that I kind of figured out after I threw my name in the hat. And it was a little bit frustrating, but I think my throwing my name in the hat kind of got it exposed. So that was helpful for Mike to get the job. I decided to throw my name in because, we just hadn't, it just kept going and going. And it's like, okay, well, I'm pretty well regarded in the conference and had a lot of people come to me. And so we just said, okay, we'll finally do this because somebody's got to do it. And we're flailing. And of course, like I said, I think that helped Mike get across the finish line because I was able to point out some stuff that was, working against getting this thing solved.
What was the inside baseball that you're talking about?
Well, I just think there were people who wanted this thing to drag out a little longer so that it would empower people who the conference were not supportive of. And so that's probably, the best I can say of it right now. It just provided an opportunity to show that there were people actually working behind the scenes to drag it out and empower people that the conference wasn't supportive of.
Can you change this rule, which I think, any speaker is going to be in jeopardy if that rule that allows any one person to come to the floor and get a vote on vacating the chair? Well, we could be going through this whole thing again if one member gets their nose out of joint.
So what happened to get us there is the first thing to understand. McCarthy tied the rules of the conference to the speaker's chair when he negotiated to get himself across the finish line.
Right.
And by doing so, the will of the conference became second to those one or two individuals that McCarthy needed. And when I gave my speech to the conference yesterday, I said, look, we got to separate the speaker from the rules. The rules belong to the conference. And one of my points, and thank goodness it's also Mike's point, is decentralizing the power of the speaker. I think we've got to empower the members to represent their districts. And that is something Mike wants to do. And this rulemaking, getting it back to the conference, let the conference decide what the rule ought to be. Not only this rule, but all the rules will let the members represent their districts. And that's I think the most important thing. I believe in representative democracy, and so does Mike. And so I'm glad to see him win it. And if he'd have won it the first time, I wouldn't have had to put my name in. So.
There are a lot of things that need to be done. I think first up on the list is a vote, maybe even this afternoon, in support of Israel. And then can you get the budget appropriation bills across the goal line before I think the deadline's November 17th?
17th, yeah. So that's going to be a lot of work. And we were supposed to be in district this week and next week, and I don't think we are now. So we'll be here working to try to get as much of the approach bills done as we can. He issued a targeted backwards plan this morning, and so we're just going to crush and try to get them done. Now, there's a strong chance we don't get them all finished. There'll be some percentage of discretionary spending that's still, right now we're already like 60 or 70% passed, because the Senate passed, or the House passed. For example, my approach side, the Homeland approach, we passed Department of Defense approach. So the big chunk items, most of them have gone through. We've got several more, but we'll get more of those done, and then we may or may not have a few left over, and then we'll have to address that issue getting closer to November 17th. But we will get a lot of them done.
Of course, anything that comes out of the House has to then be considered by the Senate, and
correct.
It seems as if there will be a need for several conferences. That takes time.
Yeah, it does. And what's tragic is those 4 bills that we've sent to the Senate, the Senate hasn't done a single thing on them. And in fact, Chuck Schumer, I think it was a week or so ago, right after we sent the Homeland Appropriations bill over, he took a trip to China. So the Senate's got to get off its backside and start doing some work, because they have 4 appropriations bills sitting over there waiting on them to action on, and they haven't done anything.
Yeah. What is the great lesson you think that has been learned as a result of this whole mess?
I think one of the biggest lessons is the speaker. You can't tie the committee rules to the speaker and make basically the entire conference of the Congress beholding to 1 or 2 members or some number of members, and that's a big lesson. And Mike, Speaker Johnson gets it, and I think we're in a much better place. Like I said, we've got a much more conservative Speaker of the House of Representatives right now, and for Tennesseans and for America, that's an amazing and great thing.
That's Congressman Mark Green from the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee, speaking earlier today in the 3 o'clock hour of this show about the new Speaker, Mike Johnson, who took the gavel today. And I want to say thanks to Congressman Green. We are very blessed here at Super Talk 99.7 and having a great relationship with our congressional representatives, so that when things happen, we can find somebody who comes on, even if the request comes at the very last minute. And he was very accommodating today, even though it's a very busy day on the Hill. In the time that I have left, I want to spend a few minutes talking about music. Change topics completely, leave you with a palate cleanser of sorts. The Beatles have not been together for a long, long time, and now 2 of them are dead. And so the question is, how can there possibly be a new song from the Beatles? Well, they've got one. It's a song called Now and Then. It was really a John Lennon song that he recorded on a cassette tape. And way back in 1978, him at the piano singing. And then apparently at some point, George Harrison stepped up and did a guitar piece for it before he died. And so they were using some new technology. It's called artificial intelligence, but I don't want you to get the wrong idea. The artificial intelligence didn't make any of the music. It just simply was used in a very interesting way to separate a mono recording and turn it into individual tracks. So if all 3 of those things were on a recording, now with this amazing technology, these old mono recordings can be analyzed by artificial intelligence, and they can pull out, here's the vocal, here's the piano, here's the guitar. Well, then, so you take that, you got Paul McCartney, he's still around, you got Ringo Starr, they added something to the track, and it's going to be released any day now. It's going to be an actual Beatles song, even though 2 of the Beatles are no longer with us. How exciting that's going to be.
That it will be very interesting. I can't wait to hear it.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. Dolly Parton's Rock Star. Everybody wants to hear this. She's going to be bringing Rock Star to movie theaters and cinemas worldwide for the first listen. You can go to the movie theater, and apparently there's a lot of other things in there about Dolly Parton's history and her background, but they turned it into a big thing that will be on at the movie theaters. And so I think a lot of people will do that. I think they'll like to hear the new songs, and of course, everybody loves Dolly.
Absolutely.
Garth Brooks has a new album, the 14th studio album called Time Traveler. You can only get it at the Bass Pro Shops.
Okay. All right.
He knows his audience, I think.
I guess he does, yeah.
I think he does. And finally, just to leave you with a nice thought, apparently there is a new study out from researchers in Canada who say that putting on your headphones or earbuds or whatever it is you listen to music with and playing your favorite songs can have a pain-reducing impact on you. If you're in chronic pain, listening to your favorite songs can help.
Yeah.
It's good to know. You don't have to take a bunch of painkillers. Just grab a bunch of old CDs.
There you go.
50 minutes now past the hour, 6 o'clock. Grace Point Healthcare delivers medicine affordably with the menu-style transparent pricing. You'll know how much it's going to cost before the care is delivered. They have smart care plans, start at $69 a month. Now, right now, a lot of people are making big healthcare decisions, deciding which is going to be what health insurance they're going to take. Here's the thing about these smart care plans. You can marry that with a high-deductible insurance plan, and it could end up saving you a lot of money. At Grace Point, they take their time with each patient. They see you the same or next day. No long wait times or crowded wait rooms. They treat naturally whenever possible. It is a military vet-owned practice. Just some of the reasons why it's been voted the best primary care provider by Toast of Music City year after year after year. Grace Point Healthcare is on Main Street in Franklin. Just call this number, 599-6868. That's 599-6868 to schedule a visit.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. There was a recent study by J.D. Power looking at how happy investors were with their advisors, and it wasn't pretty. What they found was only 11% of the respondents said that they were getting comprehensive financial planning, that the fees were clear, and that they felt that the advisor was acting in their best interest. Not a good picture, 11%. Now, one of the things that we do is we do comprehensive planning. We fit all of those bills, number one. But one of the things I want to talk about is in the financial planning process, what I think it ought to look like and what is available that people aren't getting. And one of the things is called probability analysis. So in essence, this is what we're talking about. We're trying to accumulate money for retirement, put money aside, hoping that we'll have enough so that we can have income throughout retirement. And what we find is that people have Social Security, they have pensions in their financial plan, and they also have investments. Now, with their investments, we want to do something very specific that it really requires quite an academic background to do this. And this is where we look at the cost of capital of the various things that you own in your investment portfolio. It sounds scary, it sounds really detailed, but here's the idea. Is if we look at various asset classes like large stocks and small stocks and large value and bonds and so on and so forth, we know the expected return or the cost that these entities have to pay to use your money. So we can come up with an expected return of the portfolio. We can also come up with what's called standard deviation, or how much that portfolio return may deviate from the expected return. Now that's a whole other video, but what I want to do is show you how we use this. If I look at a financial plan and I say, well, you got this area, this area, this area, what I can do is I can say, well, based on when you want to retire, this is how much income you can take, and here's the likelihood of being able to have this income survive throughout your entire life. And the way it works is this. If I take a portfolio and I say, there's the expected return, I can look at history and say, well, the way your portfolio is designed, how might your one-year returns vary from the expected return, the long-term expected return? Well, what we know from academic research is that portfolios well designed and properly managed in ways that I can't get into right now, it's too complicated, portfolios actually close in an expected return, but we don't know what the short-term returns are going to be. So what we do is we project out and say, well, what if the return that happened in 1936 is followed by the return that happened in 1975, which is followed by the return in 1995, or what if it's reversed? What if they happen in different orders? And we can do 1,000 iterations, different variations on when those and how those returns may come in. And what that does is, because we can't predict the future, what return's going to follow the other, we can figure out, is it likely that we are going to be able to take the income that we need throughout retirement from this portfolio? And if not, how can we rearrange the furniture or the portfolio to give us a higher likelihood of success? And we look at life expectancies, we look at a lot of different things, but this is what is available to people that they're not getting from the financial planning community. If you want to know more, go to paulwinkler.com, set up a free 15-minute phone call, paulwinkler.com, and come in and find out more about what we do.